For coming. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. This is the meeting of January 13th of the Town Council. Seems like we've had several meetings already this month because we were here last night for budget meetings. So if we get punchy, please give us a little slack. Announcements, let me see, I think I have something. The town offices will be closed on Monday, January 17th, in the observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The Town Council will like to offer our sincere condolences to the family and friends of Betty J. Spence, who died on Saturday, January 8th. Betty's service to the town of Merrimack is unparalleled. She was an employee of the town for over 30 years. Betty served as the town clerk, tax collector, assistant town manager, interim welfare administrator, volunteer firefighter, and an emergency medical technician. She also served on the Board of Selectmen and the Town Council at one point held the position of Vice Chairman of the Board of Selectmen and as the Vice Chairman and the Chairman of the Town Council. We are forever grateful for all of the time and effort that Betty provided to the town of Merrimack. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Betty Spence and her family at this point. Thank you very much. Upcoming Town Council meetings, Wednesday, January 19th. It's the snow date for that would be Thursday, January 20th. It's our third budget meeting. Thursday, January 27th is a regular meeting at 7 o'clock here. The budget meetings are at 6:30. And then Thursday, February 10th is a regular meeting here in this room as well. Paul, did you have any announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Starting February 1st, there'll be a change in what is accepted in our single-stream recycling center. We will no longer be able to accept number 3, 4, 6, or 7 plastics. Those plastics should be disposed of in the regular trash stream. For a list of what is recyclable, please visit the town's website underneath solid waste. The skating rink at Watson Park is open for the season. As long as temperatures continue to cooperate, the rink is open from all day long, as well as lights are on from 4:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. each evening. I hear Saturday is going to be a very good day to go ice skating. That's all I have.
Oh, okay, thank you. At this point, we'll open up for comments from the press and public. Anybody has a desire to address the council at this stage, please come on up, tell us who you are. Seeing nobody rushing for the mics. We have no recognitions, resignations, or retirements, nor appointments for tonight or public hearings. Legislative updates from state reps. We did receive a couple of notices from Maureen. I'm going to read these in order, I guess. Legislative update from January 6th. The New Hampshire House has been in session for 2 full days in Manchester. Back on the 6th, the House Bill 478, sponsored by Representatives Mooney, Nodder, Healy, Rung, Mayville, Cushing, Rice, Senator Daniels, Riccardi, Sherman, Carson, passed on the House floor. The bill's passage overturned the Judiciary Committee's recommendation of inexpedient to legislate. This is very good news for Merrimack. Earlier last year, the council wrote a supportive letter for its passage, and she provides a link to the bill itself. The bill is now on its way to the Senate, where a hearing will be scheduled. More details to follow. Special thank you to all 8 Merrimack legislators who voted in favor of House Bill 478, respectively, Maureen Mooney. And then Bob Healy gave us notice that there were going to be some hearings on the 19th. Starting from 1:45 until the end of the day, they'll be hearing various PFAS bills. At 1:45 p.m., House Bill 1167 to establish a maximum contaminant level for perfluorinated chemicals in surface water. At 2:30, House Bill 1185 relative to treatment of water contaminated with fluorinated chemicals. And at 345 House Bill 1602-FN relative to perfluorinated chemicals in drinking water. If anyone wishes to provide testimony on any of these bills, the address it should be sent to is House Resources Recreational and Development, that's all one word, at leg.state.nh.us. That is, unless you want to appear in person at the State House, which I didn't think they were meeting at the State House, but they might be for this.
It's a committee
Oh.
meeting.
Oh, okay, committees are. And then there's another one from Bob Healy, dated the 11th. Legislative updates, state of the state finances, AKA taxes and fees as of 12/30. Short version, we are 122 million above plan. We took in way more money than our state budget plan called for, like 14% or more. It bodes well for two bills in the Ways and Means Committee this session. HB 1221-FN will lower the business profits tax by a whopping 0.1 from 7.6% to 7.5%, and also lower the business enterprise tax, AKA the payroll tax, by 0.05% from 0.55 to 0.50. And you can see more information on that in a link. The other is HB 1204-FN, which will lower the meals and rentals tax from 8.5% to 7.9%, and will once again change the percent of the meals and rooms tax revenue shared with municipalities and increase it from 30 to 40%, thereby keeping the promise made when that tax was initially created. That promise was a 40% revenue share, and there's a link for that you can find on the generalcourt.state.nh.us website as well. And that's all I have. I don't know if there's any other legislative updates. Seeing none, we'll move on. That brings us to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to give you an update on some hiring that we're looking to do. The town is actively going through the hiring process for 7 firefighters. We have candidates in various stages of the hiring process and are considering several candidates. The town does have a nepotism policy, so we will not be offering positions to family members of current employees unless we have assurances in place to avoid conflicts of interest and supervision of them by family members. We have 2 firefighters that will be starting on January 24th. One is in the last phase of a background check. One is halfway through a background check. This should take care of the 4 positions approved related to the SAFER grant, which takes effect on February 27th, 2022. Additionally, we have 1 candidate who we have extended a conditional offer, and I just heard back today that they're accepting the offer. And we have 2 other openings that we're considering candidates for those positions as well. Once we get all these people hired, we'll be fully staffed at the fire department. And as of February 27th, 2022, we'll be going to 11 staffing on duty as the budget permits, per the agreement that the town made when they accepted the SAFER grant. That's what I have for my town manager's report tonight.
Any questions for the town managers? Andy?
I just want to make sure that I caught what you said. The SAFER grant is effective
February
February
27th.
27th. And so we actually are getting these firefighters in place prior to the grant being effective.
That is correct.
We have 1 that is a background check complete,
2.
2 that's complete, 1 that's partway through, you said?
Yeah, I'm just waiting on some final information.
And then you have a offer that was accepted today,
Yep.
and you have another offer that's out that you're waiting on feedback. Was that,
Yeah, I'm waiting on a driving records check for that individual.
okay,
So I have
Thank-
5 offers out there right now.
thank you.
And that's going to bring us to full staffing?
When we hire the 7, that will be full staff.
Finley? Go ahead.
Paul, if the SAFER grant takes effect on February 27th,
the funding is available for these hires in advance?
No, but because I have 3 vacancies,
Oh,
I have some money that I can bring these guys in, salary savings that I can bring them in a little bit earlier, start their training that much earlier so they're up and running. And then once February 27th hits, slide
Okay, ready to go.
8 firefighters into that SAFER grant.
Thank you.
Nancy?
Could you explain a little bit about, you're talking about the nepotism?
Yes.
We'll talk about the elephant in the room, that is the social media that I've read, and I refuse to respond on social media. And anyone who wants to call me, my phone number is 494-5139 to talk to me directly. And it would be nice if I had the microphone on. Right. Anyone who wants to talk to me directly about any of this, I've always said, and I've said it more than once, I'll talk to you on the phone, I'll meet you for a cup of coffee, and we'll talk about it. But I refuse to respond in social media. Face direct on the phone is fine. So if anybody wants to call me directly, my phone number is 494-5139. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find out for you. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about the nepotism. Was that a policy we already had?
Yes, it was in place. It's always been in place in our personnel policy.
And so you made a comment just now talking about supervising. What does that mean?
It means that direct supervision of a family member as defined in our personnel policy. So, for instance, if my son, daughter, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, nephew, niece, that would be considered, I couldn't supervise them directly. That would be considered nepotism.
Okay, so it doesn't mean you won't hire them.
Doesn't mean I won't hire them.
It means that it has to be under certain conditions that that family member is not supervising that person.
Right, and I need some assurances in place to avoid conflicts of interest as
And
well.
where are we at with the assurance?
We're working on it.
What does that mean?
The union and the town are working on.
So you are in communication with the union, working to make sure the town has assurance that there won't be any relationship between a supervisor and direct report employees.
Correct.
And I don't think that's a bridge too far. I mean, that's the policy at the place I work. I spent 20 years in the military. I've never seen a relative directly supervise somebody else in the military. So I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
No, and we're in the process of trying to get those assurances in place.
Okay.
Thank you. I wanted that clarified. Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none. We have no consent agenda tonight, which brings us to old business. Number 1, this is the Flying Eagles Field Enhancement Project request follow-up discussion, submitted by Robert Frigo and Tim Souter. Town Council to consider the Flying Eagles request to restore the field to its original open boundaries by removing a selected number of trees located on the town-owned property on Karen/Griffin Street, known as Sklar Waterfront Park. That's different than what we talked about before.
It's the same property,
Patterson Field or something, or Peterson's Field, or?
Yeah, Patterson Field, it was originally, as we said when we met a month ago, well, 2 months ago, back in November. This was a field that was owned by Patterson Construction that the town took over, and we've been flying there for 34 years. The Sky Park, I think, is a termination that the town uses in reference to part of the parcel of land in the area.
Well,
But Patterson Field is the name of the field.
Right. Scalar is not surrounding the flying field. That is town-owned property that surrounds the flying field.
Okay.
Scalar is further down on the right-hand side from this park. But the property
Okay.
that we're talking about right now is town-owned property around this field.
Right, okay. I just noticed this piece on the thing about Sklar Waterfront Park, and I wanted to confirm that we're not talking about that,
No,
because the Conservation Commission controls Sklar Waterfront Park, and,
that's correct.
And you've already talked to them about
Yes, I'll go through that.
a small piece
Yeah.
that you want to deal with.
Yes.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just-
Yeah, no, that's fine. As you recall, obviously, I'm Bob Frigo, by the way, and with me is Tim Souter.
Okay,
We met with you folks back in November. At that time, we went through our background, what our club is, what we do, our affiliation with the national organization known as the Academy of Model Aeronautics, that our activities are under the rules of the Federal Aviation Administration, which we abide by. And at our meeting the last time, after we'd gone through our presentation, you asked several things of us. One, you wanted us to go back and talk to some of the other stakeholders of interest in the property, and particularly in the project. And also, you want a little more clarification on the trees that we would like to cut with your permission. So that's what I intend to go through this evening, just bring an update to where we are and what we've accomplished over the past 2 months.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll skip this side real quick. You know, we've been there for 34 years. And again, as you pointed out, Mr. Coney, we're looking for permission to improve the flying field over there. This, again, was Patterson Field back in 1992. It was an open area. On the right side is the field today. And as you can see, the tree growth has been proliferous in the area, and we're bound by, virtually on all 4 sides by trees that have grown up over the last 34 years that we've been there. The additional inputs that the town had requested is that you wanted to speak with the Conservation Committee, which we did. You wanted comments from the Community Development and Planning Zoning. Again, to talk, because we're nearby the Merrimack River, we needed to talk with the Lower Merrimack River Advisory Committee, which we did. We also spoke with folks from the Public Works Department. And again, you asked for a better understanding of the trees to be cut. So I'm going to start with that and work my way through to the other stakeholders. This again is a picture of our field. It's taken from the north end of the field looking southward. So on the right-hand side of the screen where you see the pits and the cars, that would be the west side of the field from our point of view. And on the left side would be the east side of the field, which we're talking about in terms of the trees. And we're standing at the north end, and directly to the top of the picture would be the south end of the field, where we'd like to cut a notch in the trees. We gave you a trapezoidal format of the area of interest for us, and there's really 2 principal areas. One is that north and eastern side of the field, where most of the trees that affect our flying process is of concern to us. And then that one down the bottom is the notch to improve our approach from the south of the field when wind is coming from the north. More specifically, if you look at the area where I've drawn some bars across, this is really the area we're interested in. So we're not looking to clear cut all the trees you see on this picture. It's really the trees in these 2 striped areas that affect our flying operations. Generally speaking, when we fly an aircraft, I don't know if this mouse is working, we would fly in a counterclockwise motion up the east side of the field, curving over the north and coming back south again, just repeating that pattern. So these trees are on the east side of the field. We lose visibility to our aircraft because they've grown so tall in the last 34 years. This is a picture of the east side of the field and the trees that we want to address. You can see there's a few tall pines that are in there as well. I took these pictures in the first part of December. The question was asked, well, how many trees are you talking about? So this is the east side of the field without the foliage up there. And at a closer look, the trees that are there are not huge in terms of girth, in terms of diameter. They're just tall sapling trees whose canopy blocks our vision in that circular pattern when we fly. These are the trees that we'd like to remove. The lower brush and the lower saplings have no consequence to us, at least for another 34 years, I hope, and I won't be here to worry about it. So we're looking at these trees. They're not anything outside of our ability to take down. Any person who's skilled with the soil or is a homeowner would have addressed trees like this in the past. I took this picture. This is the road that borders the east side of the field. And I want to take this picture for a couple of reasons. These are the trees that we fly over all the time when we're trying to fly our pattern. And if you look at the picture on the right-hand side of the screen, and if you look through, you can just about see our field through the trees. And these trees are standing between myself and the road and our field. So these are the trees we're going after. As you can see, they're not huge. We're not talking about huge timbers that would be have some value in terms of lumber or anything else. They're just snarly trees. And you can see the beginning of bittersweet vinery that's starting to invade the area. This picture on the left-hand side with the sign that says no motorized vehicles, this was one of the roads that the ATV folks would like to travel, or had traveled for years, and the Conservation Committee ruled that they did not want any ATV traffic in the area. So they put some stones across the road there, and they dropped that tree that's halfway up the picture there across the road area as a barrier. And the reason I took this picture, if you look on the right-hand side, and I wish this mouse was, oh, it is working. This little yellow area right here is this sign over here, okay? Just to give you an orientation where it is. And the reason for the picture, you see the tall pine in the right-hand side picture. The folks from the conservation groups asked, could we drop that tree across that pathway to make a permanent barrier to ATV traffic? And my response to him was, if you'll give us permission to drop it, I'll put it across Route 3 if you want. I'm joking, of course. But we would try to accommodate them as much as we can to satisfy their needs as well.
Is that on the Patterson Field?
It is on the side of the Patterson Field, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So it's not conservation land?
No, it is not.
All
The conservation land, for the most part, is in the notch area, which I'm going to talk about right now.
Right.
These are the trees in the notch area. That's that south U-shaped area that we would like to cut out. And again, what that allows us to do, because we have to fly over the trees in order to land in the field, by the time you clear the trees and start to drop down and have cut your engine back and everything else, you're already over the fence and the very end of our runway, and we wind up shooting past the runway. If we could cut a notch, we could come down slower and land on the field as we're supposed to. But this is the type of vegetation that's in that notch area. It's prolific in terms of the bittersweet. On the left-hand side, it's wrapped completely around this tree. And the tree's pretty much on its deathbed. I mean, it's still got some leaves, but the trunk is diseased and everything else. And on the left-hand side picture, right-hand side picture, you can see that the bittersweet is pervasive in the trees that still stand there. So one of the things that the conservation people asked us is if we were to cut some trees, then would we be clearing out some of the bittersweet to help them out? And to the extent that it is there, yes, we would. But I mean, we're not going to go in and clear bittersweet throughout the whole property. That's, not within our wheelhouse to do. So the inputs from the stakeholders that you asked us to talk to, we met with the Conservation Committee on November the 15th. The bullets you see here are taken from the minutes of that meeting that they issued. They expressed little concern to the north end of the field because it's town property, it's not conservation property. So they had no interest, I shouldn't say no interest, but it was not of concern within their
Yeah.
authority. They thought the aesthetics of the area to the east would improve if some of the trees were removed because of all the vegetation you see in there. But they would want some semblance of a boundary, and that's why they were asking, could we drop the trees in certain areas to create, if you would, a border or a trim to the field? And we said, yes, we'll do that to the best of our abilities. There was a lot of discussion about how many trees would be cut. And it was, until I took those pictures, it was a little hard to determine what do you mean by tree, because there's, trees this big and there's trees about this big. So in the pictures I showed you, there were two pictures side by side. If you take them together, they show the span of the east side of the field. In the left-hand side, there were about 15 trees there, 15, 16 trees. On the right side, there's probably another half dozen to 8 trees. Those are the trees we're talking about, excluding the tall pines. I'll talk about those in a minute. Again, they recognized the bittersweet infestation that was there and asked if we could help with it. And again, if it's within the area that we're going to clear, certainly we'll do that. There was a good part of the discussion was that some of the trees that were marked had been cut prematurely. What that was about was Tim and I were asked to go in and mark the trees in the south end that we would like to clear. That's the notch area, which we did. At the meeting on the 15th, Tim had a conflict with another meeting, so I went to the conservation group on my own and got caught unawares of the thing. So Tim and I had a conversation afterwards. We do a field cleanup on the Patterson Field. We've been there 34 years, and we maintain it, I hope you expect very well. So we do a cleanup in the spring, we do a cleanup in the fall, taking out debris, taking out dead material, et cetera. It turned out that a couple of our guys thought we had permission to start dropping the trees, and we didn't. So that was on us. It was poor communication on our part, and we shouldn't have done it, but I can't put them back up. There's still a couple more trees in that area we'd like to take down. The conservation people did ask us if we needed the input from the DPW, which we did go off and get. And then they said we needed the general support from the town council and DPW to proceed with the project. But other than that, they were supportive of what we wanted to do. So we were grateful to talk to them. In terms
So,
of, I'm
Before
sorry.
you go further,
Yeah,
you made a comment that there were like 15 trees and 12 trees or something
Yeah.
like that. Can you show me the picture you're
Sure,
talking to?
certainly.
Because I didn't see anything with that few that I would
well,
see.
these two pictures, if you take these two pictures together, they make kind of a what's the word? I'm looking for? Yeah, but anyway, they give
One
you
of
a
those,
good,
yeah.
they give you a good picture of the side of the field. So if you put those side by side, the camera was such I couldn't get it all in at once.
Yep.
So I was counting the trees on the left-hand side of the picture. What I'm counting as trees are those that have some kind of substance to them. If you look at the, where is it? If you look at the, I can't get the mouse to work. There's some small twiggy ones in the background. I didn't count those trees, but the ones that have some size, those are what I'm counting. I thought I counted about 15 or so, 15, 16, 17 trees in there. And on the right-hand side, there's probably of things of any size, there's probably another 8 or so. So we're not talking about taking down, 60 to 80 trees.
And that's that entire triangle area that you had striped?
It's the striped area because what it is, these are the tall trees that provide that leaf cover.
Yeah.
That canopy that we can't see past. The smaller ones obviously are low enough that they don't bother us. But these are the trees that bother us and we would like to take down with the town's permission.
A lot of the trees to the north, northwest, or northeast side, those are kind of low cut, and you can see them in the photos, but they're not tall like that. And we can shorten them if you'd like, but they're mainly just low brushy trees. You
Yeah.
can see them in the bottom left border of
Yeah.
the photograph. We can take them down or cut it, thin them out if you'd like. The only thing that would help us is if we have to recover an aircraft, but for the most part, those are small. We're talking about the ones you can see about halfway up the photo on the left side of the photo. Those are the trees we're talking about. And the majority of those trees are very small in diameter.
Mhm.
The larger ones are the ones he's referring to. Although he took those pictures, if you see it kind of goes to the left and then to the right, they're in that area as the line goes to the right again.
Okay.
Okay.
It
So-
just looks like there would be a lot more than
Well,
than
there's-
2 dozen trees.
Yeah, I mean numerically, if you counted everything that had vegetation and leaf on it, yeah, there's a lot of trees, but, excuse me, the majority of them, the vast majority of them are lower than, that affect us. They're, less than 20 feet, and that's not a problem to them. These others, they're 50, 60, 70 feet tall, and with the leaves on them, we look, as we're standing on the ground looking upward, we're starting to look through the tree canopy, and as the plane circles, we kind of lose it behind the trees.
I get that. I guess what I'm worried about is 50, 60, 70 feet tall and not necessarily 2 inches across. That becomes a larger liability and requires somebody with a bit of skill to go in and take care of that and be careful not to hurt himself or anybody
Yeah,
else.
I'm looking at these trees in here. These are the ones we're talking about. They're probably 6 to 8 inches in diameter, maybe, and some of them, some smaller than that. Nothing that Tim, myself, and other members of the club would not have handled on our own property. They're,
Your own property is different than
no,
town
I
property.
understand, but, and part of our presentation to the council was that the club would assume all risk and liabilities. We'd sign a waiver for the town.
Well, yeah, okay.
Okay?
We'll get into that because
yeah,
I don't think
certainly.
our liability company will allow us to sign off on that waiver, but.
Okay. So we spoke with the Conservation Committee. I spoke with Mr. Kyle Fox from DPW. and was trying to set up a time to go through the presentation I gave to you folks back in November. His take was that it wasn't necessary. Basically, he didn't have an objection to the project, but he said that the DPW would not get involved in clearing the trees, and we were not asking for that assistance. And he, as you just mentioned, voiced some concern that the trees were taken down safely. That was his only input on. Other than that, he had no objection to the project. Becky Thompson had sent out our presentation to the folks from the Community Development, Planning and Zoning for comments. The bullets that you see here are from an email they sent to her. We did not speak directly with them. Becky was the one who talked with them. As far as the Natticook stream, they said they were not concerned about that because it was a third-order stream and didn't have the requirements of fourth order or higher. So they said they had no objection there. The folks from the Sohegan River Advisory Committee were not concerned because we're more than a quarter of a mile from the Sohegan River, so it doesn't affect that process. They recommended that we speak with, because we're closer to the Merrimack River, that we speak with the Merrimack Advisory Committee, which we did do. They thought perchance a permit would be required to cut the trees. My understanding from what I've read of the tree harvesting laws in New Hampshire, a landowner has a right to cut up to 20 cords of wood on their property without a permit, and the permit can be obtained from the ruling authority, like the town council to do that. The question was raised in their mind, was there any value in the trees? And we'd already had investigated that. We had people from a lumber company down there. There was no interest in the trees in terms of lumber. You can't make any good boardwood out of it. And there was no interest from another person in terms of commercial firewood. Problem basically being is there's not enough there to harvest to make their time worthwhile. And also access to the field through that bridge and trestle was too low. They couldn't get the equipment in that they want. So basically from the community development group, they had no issues in adverse to what we wanted to do. On December 9th, we met with the Lower Merrimack River Advisory Committee. And the four bullets below are from Mr. Fran Murphy, his committee. These are his from an email that was sent to Becky Thompson. And they accepted the presentation that we made and that the representation that the Natticook Brook would be protected, that the brush surrounding the brook would be maintained and preserved, which it will be. The project did not represent a threat to the Merrimack River because we're not close enough to it to be of concern. And his comment was that the committee offers no suggested conditions on the towns approving the project. Worded differently than I would have worded it, but basically saying he had no objections to it. So I guess that's a little more legalese than I would get involved in.
That's their committee legalese, yeah,
Yes.
if you would.
So lastly, just to review what we want to do, on the east side of the field.
we-
Certainly,
Could you
yes.
interrupt you for just a second? Lon, did you have a question?
Yeah, when you say maintained and preserved, is that using two words to say the same thing, or are you guys going to
Well-
somehow alter the brush on the brook?
When I say maintain and preserve, I mean the vegetation that grows on the property, we're going to let it grow. We do, and when we do spring cleanup, we do cut some of the vegetation, it grows right back. So all the vegetation bordering the Natticook Brook will be left in place. We're not going to clear that out. And it's not trees that are there, it's a lower growth, and that doesn't affect what we want to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Whoops, sorry. So on the east side of the field, those trees I showed you would be the ones that we would like to cut. And it would be done by members of our club who are trained to do that. We would assume the risk and liability to do it. We'd use the trunks of the trees probably as a property border to kind of give a delineation of the field to the rest of the surrounding area. The branches that we cut, we would mulch, we'd get a chipper and mulch it into mulch and spread it as ground cover to make the area attractive. The time frame is 12 to 18 months. It's dependent upon the weather. We'd like doing it this time of year before the snow falls, obviously, because we can get in there. Once the snow's in the ground, it's more difficult, and then it becomes a spring issue, which then becomes a problem when there's nesting and other things going on. So as far as how quickly we could do it really depends on weather, your approval, and the availability of our personnel to do it. The south notch, we still have a few trees that we would like to take down. We would do this in the wintertime, and the conservation group in this particular case asked if we cut these trees down, could we just leave them there for creature habitat? And we certainly have no problem with that. Makes our work easier, so yeah,
No, I
I'd
get
be
it.
happy to do that for you. Again, we plan to use our own personnel to do it with waivers, and we'd assume the risk and liability for it. On the large pine, this is an area we would not get involved in, and we would secure the services of a licensed professional tree service to come in. I think there's about 6 tall pine trees that are there. Those we would use as border, and those are particularly like the ATV road and stuff. And again, the branches and stuff, we would mulch into, shred into mulch and spread for ground cover. And the time frame of these, it would be, that'd have to be determined, and it's gonna be based on the cost to do it, since we're absorbing that, our club resources, the seasonal issues, et cetera. So we would clear the eastern area of those smaller trees first to give us the clearance to drop the trees where the conservation group would like us to put them down. And finally, the north edge notch, we didn't talk about that a whole lot tonight, but there's just 2 trees up there that we would drop to give us a clearer shot on our runway. The rest of the trees are far enough away from us that they don't impact what we want to do. So the final thoughts on our proposal is obviously it's dependent upon the council's approval, which we're hoping to obtain. We'll work with the town to the best of our ability to satisfy any interest the town has and any concerns they have. We think that it's going to enhance both the utilization and the appearance of the property. And principally, it's at no cost to the town. And what I mean by the utilization, obviously, it's our flight operations that we're concerned about. But also, right now, those trees, it's not like you can take a walk through the forest and it's a nice, pristine area to walk in. It's just snarled with bittersweet trees of limited beauty, if you will. So opening the field up to make it look like a community activity field, we think would improve the appearance of the field, make it more interesting to people who do want to walk the paths down there. Because right now, I think, we mentioned last time, we're probably one of the better kept secrets in Merrimack as far as the field existing and what we've been doing there for 34 years.
Yep.
The project will not interfere with the inadequate brook or the Merrimack River. That was a very principal concern of a couple of the groups. And we're going to protect the natural vegetation that grows there, and we won't cut any more trees than is necessary for our operations, because that's all we're really interested in. So with all that being said, one last question. This is what we're trying to avoid. If you can see the plane that's in the tree, it's been up there for 2 years. There's the tree next to it, there's
That's
another.
up in the
there's-
tree?
Yeah, there's another
okay.
tree, another plane, another tree. These are those tall pines.
Is that one that's gonna be cut down?
Yes, please,
So is the owner of that plane waiting to retrieve it?
possibly. The reason this happens is basically pilot depth perception. And what I mean by that is we fly outside of the airplane. A full-size airplane has a pilot, and it's like driving a car. You see where you're going. We're standing on the ground, 100 feet below with the plane at a distance, trying to judge, are we on this side of the tree or are we above the tree? And where we think we're coming in on the field side of the tree, sometimes we misjudge it, and the tree is right in our way. So that's how that plane got up there. So that is our principal concern. We've lost a lot of aircraft in the trees over the last 34 years. So anyhow, with all that said, is there anything else we can answer for the council and alleviate any of your concerns?
Paul, do you have any comments as far as the liability issues?
Yeah, I figured that was going to be my question. What we'd have to do is we would have to be added as an additionally insured on the policy, on this group's policy as additionally insured for the purpose of cutting trees. And they would have to talk to their insurance company about that themselves to see if they would in fact, insure them for cutting these trees. If we get named as additionally insured, and then we would need that policy, as well as indemnification policy, signatures on indemnification forms that we would need. And I think with those two things, if their insurance company is willing to insure this group to cut trees, and they're willing to give us the indemnification form, then that will take care of the liability issue. We'd ask them that these trained people who cut these trees actually use protective gear, such
So-
as helmets,
Yep.
shields, and don't drop trees on one another or branches.
It
Um,
seems funny, but
You'd be surprised.
we heard somebody talking about dropping branches on a fellow person while they were cutting their trees, so.
Oh.
So we'd ask for helmets and shields and safety gear that you would have. And it's not safety gear that, at your house. It's more of a commercial operation of safety gear with chaps as well. On that, the big thing I think you're gonna run into is your insurance policy to make sure that they'll let you take on the role of cutting trees, and they are gonna cover you for that. And we'd need that specifically mentioned when you give us the additional insure, this is for cutting the trees. So that if somebody does get hurt, it falls back on your insurance company.
Well, to that point, we were prepared to do the work simply because, we're a private club and we're a nonprofit, that type of thing. So in terms of trying to mitigate the cost of this thing, that's why we would have done it. But hearing the comments, Tim and I will talk afterwards, but we can probably look at an alternative to have somebody commercially cut them. Would that satisfy you?
As long, they're approved
long as they
tree
have the
company, as
insurance.
long as.
I'm assuming
And
that,
actually, if you have a commercial gentleman who wants to volunteer his time but use his insurance on this, we're okay with that. We just need some kind of insurance that the
Okay.
person who's cutting the trees has insurance. Our insurance company was very, very pointed when I asked the question about something else, that only trained professionals with your DPW group or a licensed tree company
Mhm.
should be cutting trees on
Okay.
your property, because the liability is so high, and actually, I think that's one of the highest worker comp rates
It
in
is.
the country is tree work,
Mhm.
because of the dangers associated with cutting trees. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could seriously hurt yourself and anyone else around you. So,
Understood.
if you want to go with a commercial tree outfit to do this stuff, we're more than happy to do that. All we ask is that they include us as additionally insured on their insurance policy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out what alternatives we might have. I mean, we intended to do it ourselves. If that's not satisfactory, just asking the council here, using commercial people to do it, who are, bonded or insured, whatever, that would satisfy your concerns, is what I think I'm hearing.
That will satisfy the town's concerns for liability. Don't know how the council will
Yeah.
feel that way, but that will resolve the liability.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up to questions if anybody else has any comments. Generally speaking, I'm comfortable with the project that you're bringing forward. I don't have a real problem with that. The liability issue is obviously the big concern. Having a bunch of volunteers start going out and cutting trees on town property was frightening. Cause I just watched a commercial person cutting trees on my property, and I know what can get involved in there, and I've gone out and cut some stuff myself. And so I'm just a little concerned about a bunch of volunteers.
And that's why
running
we
around.
made a distinction between the tall pines, which are beyond our capability,
Yeah,
and the ones that we consider saplings, which are
yeah,
within
but
our.
6 to 8 inches gets beyond sapling,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Right.
Nancy Murphy, do you have I thought I saw you raise your hand. No? Does anybody, Finley?
I'm in favor of the project, and I see, my wife's family owns, sorry about that. My wife's family owns property out in western New York. It was a dairy farm in their
Mhm.
family for years. And without somebody maintaining those fields, they grow over fast. So even though the farm is no longer utilized for the purpose of farming, they do have it hayed and dealt with every year. But I'm in favor of the project. What I The liability thing, I don't even have to say it, everybody already understands that, but it's the leftover. I understand that conservation apparently wanted you to leave the, some, trees hanging out for the habitat and so on, but I just didn't want it to look like a tornado went through. For me, I don't know, what the rest of the council thinks, but that's, my concern there. As far as the hash marked area that you showed early in your presentation, if you cleared it all, I think it was wonderful, back to a field situation. The stumpage on the bottom, I don't know how we deal with that, though. That would be a cost that I'm sure would be a little steeper.
What we have done and what we've told other folks is, the stumps are cut close to the ground, but left there because the roots retain soil, so we don't want to pull those out. It's a conservation issue in terms of holding the soil back. And the vegetation that grows, on the east side of the field, it's well over knee length, and on north end where I showed you that along the river border there, it gets up to waist deep in terms of that vegetation that comes up every single year. And we cut it down. We have a bushmaster that goes through in the spring, and 3 weeks later, it's like you haven't been there. So the vegetation is prolific. It covers, it's kind of like the snow covering the trash in the wintertime. I mean, it covers over the stumps, but the stumps would be cut very low to the ground. And the mulch that we would get from the branches and stuff would provide additional ground cover that we think would improve the appearance of the ground, so.
Great. I support the project.
I'm sorry?
I support you.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Barbara?
Yeah, the only thought, I had the same kind of concern and like, okay, we're leaving all this tree and brush hanging there, and
No.
I like the habitat idea, but also, we see a lot of forest fires out west, and a lot of that is because they don't do enough husbandry as far as cleaning out the lower brush. Guys, is there an increase? We have fire right here, so is there an increased risk if all of that brush remains there as far as any kind of fire?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay,
It wouldn't be any more of a fire load, whether
Then-
they're standing up or laying down.
yeah, no, so whatever's there is there.
Maintain the property, there would be
Just-
less chances of.
Okay.
Just repeat what he's saying, because he's not on the mic.
Yeah, sorry. He's saying that that there is no increased risk with the additional trees, that are being cut down and left, that the risk of fire is the same no matter what, so, thank you. Is that you, Chief?
Yeah, behind that mask.
That was the chief.
Were there any other questions? I mean, I have a couple of issues. One, you talk about bittersweet, and obviously, because I saw some of the Conservation Commission's notes, that's well-known and understood by them. I don't have a clue what bittersweet is. But I'm guessing it's an invasive species of vegetation that you're gonna try and clear out what you can reach when you're taking the trees down. The idea of just cutting all those trees and leaving them there on your property, on our property, is not good. We're hoping that you would be clearing out or at least stacking them alongside of the
Well-
road or something.
Well, that's what I meant by saying we would delineate the boundary of the field, using them as much like you do railroad ties to do a garden or something. We would leave the long lengths of the tree trunks as a border going around, and the mulched up branch parts would become ground cover. No, we don't want branches all over the place. 2 reasons. One, just our pride in the property as we maintain it. We want it to look good. And secondly, if we have to go retrieve a plane, we don't want to walk through brush. I mean, it's part of the problem we already have.
Break a
so
leg, yeah.
We don't want to
You
make it
don't need
worse.
that. Okay, and you talked about mulching the branches and stuff. You're gonna rent a chipper or
Yes.
something, bring it in there and
Yes.
grind all that? And that's obviously got some liability issues as well.
Right.
So people need to be incredibly careful doing something like that.
Yeah.
You hear about holding onto a branch and then getting dragged in and stuff like that. We don't wanna hear that happens. You don't wanna hear that
No.
happens, so. But cleaning up after yourself so that it looks nice when you're finished. As you said, you're proud of the property as
Right.
well, and that's encouraging. I understand the Conservation Commission, that northern notch, is okay with leaving the trees there. And
Yes.
I understand why. I mean, I do that in the back of my property as
Right.
well, for wildlife habitat. But generally speaking, in the Patterson field, or whatever it's called, your field, you don't wanna be leaving them just laying everywhere.
Agreed.
And we
Agreed.
kind of agreed to that.
Yeah.
Branches, cutting trees, clearing trees. The pines are not gonna move easily, so you're planning to clear out the lower stuff and
Right.
then try and get them to drop them where they're gonna lay, cause
Right, that's exactly correct.
unless you bring in some really big equipment, you're not moving them.
That was the problem in that, even as board feet, there's no value, because there's not enough of them, they're not clean in terms of creating lumber out of them, so lumber companies weren't interested in them. So our approach in talking to the Conservation Committee was to use them as border, block some roads as they would like to have them done. So that the trick becomes, and why we would use a professional group, is how do you notch them to get them to fall where you want them to fall? And then given the size of these trees, are beyond our capability, and we always envisioned that we would use a commercial tree service to do that.
Okay. And you said in your, thanks, you said in your comments that you would get approvals before any work is started, but you also said that the work in the north notch there was already started,
The south notch.
or south notch,
Yeah,
excuse me.
the trees that we marked, some were taken down. Some of our folks thought we already had permission to do it based on conversations we had with some members of the conservation group, but that was not the case in fact. So once we found that out, we stopped. But unfortunately, it was of strong interest to the people at the Conservation Committee. They talked quite a bit about it while I was there, so. So all I could do was apologize for it, because I was unaware of it at the time, and it was done before we could do something to stop it, so.
Okay. From what I saw the notes, they want you not to cut those other two until they've cleared it? Is that right?
I think that as I understood it, they don't want us to do anything until we get approval for the project in general.
Well, I know, but don't take
We're
our
not-
approval as approval to cut those two trees,
No,
because that's
no, we would go
conservation land.
back to them and
Yeah.
let them know, if you people agree with our project and give us permission to do it, we'll then get back in touch with them. And I'm sure the notes will go through from Becky as well, so.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? How do we want to proceed at this point?
So are you thinking a motion that?
Well, they're asking us to give them
Highlights
permission to
the
move
fact
forward with this project.
That there's a condition of them hiring a professional tree? Or coming up with a liability insurance?
Can I propose that you grant us approval of the project pending resolution of the liability and insured issue? Would that satisfy the council?
Finley?
That would satisfy me. Again, it's all hinging around the liability.
I think the liability
coverage
is
and
the
insurance
prime
coverage.
interest of the council at this point.
Right, and if their insurance coverage, if they can hire somebody to do it, that'd be wonderful, because they likely would have their insurance anyhow, or get a volunteer from a professional, but as long as the insurance component's covered, I'm in favor and would make the motion to allow the project to go forward as described to us tonight.
Mhm.
Paul, did you want to add something to that?
Just with the condition of no work to be performed until approved by the town manager or his designee based on receiving the liability insurance or a name of a professional contractor.
Mhm.
Accepted, yeah.
Second.
That was a motion and a second, okay. So there's a motion by Finley and seconded by Barbara Healy. Any other comments or thoughts? Lon?
I'm concerned that we have no completion date, or does the town manager determine that we don't need a completion date? In terms of accepting the liability, if it's,
Yeah, the problem that I see with that right now in putting a completion date on it is that we'd have to be next fall of 2022, because if we get the bomb cyclone that there might happen because of the falling temperatures and the snow that's coming up from the south, they're not gonna get in there and cut. This, you know, we're gonna get dumped with 6 to 8 inches of snow, potentially. So they might not be able to get in there and cut until next fall. So if you wanna put a date on it, something like November 30th, 2022 to be completed by, it's up to them if they think they can get that done, I guess, and up to the council if that's a good date.
I'm not trying to create a problem, I'm just trying to be sure that we understand. Absent the documentation you're requesting of the group for indemnifying liability and
Right.
so on, we're not ready to go.
Right, they're not ready to go, and to be perfectly honest with you, even if they get a contractor signed up tomorrow, they're not gonna be in there for the next 4 to 6 weeks potentially to get in, so, they were talking, what, 18 months? Up to 18 months?
12 to 18 months.
Yeah,
12 to
we
18
threw that out for a couple of reasons. One being,
I understand.
you know, the weather, time of the year, that type of thing, but
Right.
also our club resources as well. I mean,
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, we may have to do this in stages only because, you know, we're not, we're not a going concern, so,
Yeah.
um,
I mean, we just switched from doing it with club labor to.
exactly,
hire
which
and
changes the
professional
dynamics of what
services.
we're looking at.
Right,
So I could see doing it in stages
Yes.
as the club
Yeah.
resources become available.
Yeah. I mean, from our point of view is, the permission to do it, given the scope as we've described it to you folks, the time frame being flexible based on our resources, weather, and contractor availability. So we can't control some of those things. We can control the scope of the project and our assurances to you folks. But as far as the other things, the finances and availability and weather, we would just like it to be, you know, give us an ample amount of time to do this. Because if everything being equal, if we could clear it tomorrow from our enjoyment of our hobby, that would be ideal, but that's just not practical.
I mean, are we opening ourselves up to any additional liability if we stretched it out and said, you know, do this within 36 months?
I don't see any liability on our part if they're properly covered and insured for the work that they do. And that's the biggest problem. And so rather than making it a totally open-ended project, we probably should put some kind of a date that says this is the scope of what we're talking about. Anything that goes, you know, up to here or beyond that needs to really be reviewed and updated for whatever the situation is today.
Yeah.
And I'd probably want to put that at an 18-month. I'm not saying you need to be finished, but I want to hear about it again so that we can review it and see, are we making progress? Or
Yeah, no,
does
we-
it need to change? Or
Yeah, to that point, we'd be happy to come back and give you updates of how we're going. Our only issue is, you know, the time frame for us is a little bit indeterminate.
I
the
understand
conditions
that,
that I
and I'm not
mentioned.
trying to make it difficult.
Yeah,
I'm just
right,
trying to
agreed.
say, okay, you've got a project that we're okay with, but
Right,
we're not, you know, come back in 20 years and say, well, you guys said we could do this, you know, well,
no,
you know, that's a whole different ballgame.
yeah,
And
no,
so
no, I agree.
If we were to put an 18-month from today kind of limit, which that's a year and a half,
Right,
that if you're still doing it under the auspices of this discussion, you're out of bounds. You know, we need to get back
That's an
together.
easement, 18 month window.
Pretty tight, but we can.
Not to bargain with you. I was just quickly talking with Tim. Again, we can't predict the
I can't
resource.
either.
So can we make it 18 to 24 months? Would that satisfy this panel? I'm trying to
be
stretch it
honest-
because I don't know.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what the big deal about the issue is.
Yeah.
We've already defined the parameters, the conditions upon which it's done. If they don't get it done in 18 months, they don't get it done.
Right.
Even if it's not done 2 years from now, they're still limited
To
by the
what,
criteria
the scope of what we
we've
want to do,
discussed.
correct.
So I guess I'm just having a hard time understanding what's the issue.
I'm wondering about change in circumstances.
But they can't change anything
Well, but-
beyond what
but
we've decided.
Our
to do.
circumstances could change in 18 months or 24 months or something like that. I would just like to have another crack at the apple to re-understand the situation and not leave it open-ended.
Well, I'd like, if
But
that's
I
an
don't-
issue, then give them 3 years. I mean, that provides plenty of
That's
time to arrange and whatever, and it puts a comfort level on us to be able to say, well, you know,
Within 36 months, yeah.
is that, I'm negotiating for you.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Because I honestly just don't see an issue, but if there are counselors who do have an issue, then what is the, extend the time for you? I mean, really, even if it's 5 years. But 3, I think, is that reasonable for you? Is that
It seems long to
comfortable?
me, but Nancy?
I agree. I was gonna say the same thing. I think 36 months is more reasonable, just in terms of, like, we were talking about nesting and winter. I mean, that happens, and there are a number of months that you may not really be able to cut.
Right.
So, you know, as long as the scope of the work doesn't change,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't change what's there. So I know, I just think that's more reasonable, and that also will allow you some time
Yeah, I
to
appreciate
come up with
that.
the funds.
Barbara?
Not only that, but as we've seen over the last 2 years, because of COVID, it is very hard to hire anyone. And so tree services coming out of winter, they're always busy anyways.
Right.
So I think the 3 is good. Yeah, I know it feels a little long, but considering it may take 6 to 10 months to even hire anybody, as we've said, you can't get in there during the spring and summer. Lots of birds doing their thing. We just gotta wait, you know, and I'm fine with 3. I just hate to keep making you guys come back. Not that we don't enjoy seeing you, but maybe I'll go down and see
There
you.
you go.
I'll amend my motion to the 36 month.
You want to turn your mic on?
I will amend my motion, if Barbara seconds it,
Second.
accepts it, to have a 36-month deadline.
Agreed. Second.
Okay. Well, that's what it is. If there's no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? So that passes 7-0-0.
We greatly
If you
appreciate
can
your
keep
support.
within
Yes,
these
thank you.
boundaries,
Yeah.
and keep it safe.
And we want to extend an invitation, we'll come down, you guys come down, we'll teach you to fly.
Teach us to fly.
We'll teach you to fly.
I'll have to take you up on that one.
All right, thank you very much, we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you,
right,
guys.
thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
I appreciate the work you've gone through, and I hate to run you through the mill, but
Thank you.
it's not the safest thing in the world to be cutting a bunch of trees down, so.
Well, I totally agree with the liability thing.
Yeah, I agree too.
I was gonna throw a compromise out there, 20 months, it gives them 2 full
Should-
summers.
should-
But you guys already threw 36 out there first.
I mean, I
I
still
was
don't see an
gonna go
issue.
too. Right.
I still don't see an issue, but if people need a timeline, give them a reasonable time.
I just figured 20 months, that's the end of next summer, so that's 2 full summers.
They were down there cutting wood a week or 2 after we had the.
I understand that, but that's not the issue.
Okay,
Okay.
They should have gotten a slap on the hand, but
are
that's
we
different.
done? Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Under new business, you all right, Paul? Okay.
I'm fine.
New business number 1, reappointment of Merrimack representative to the Nashua Regional Planning Commission, submitted by the Town Council Chair Tom Koenig and Vice Chair Finley Rothaus. The Town Council to consider the reappointment of Timothy Tenhave as one of Merrimack's representatives to the Nashua Regional Planning Commission, NRPC, as recommended by the Merrimack Planning Board and pursuant to RSA 36:46, Roman numeral 3. In our packets, we got information on that. The planning board has recommended that we reappoint Tim, and I think Tim sent a letter out to all of us asking us to support his appointment. I have absolutely no problem with supporting Tim for reappointment to the NRPC. He was a town councilor. He's been active in town. He's worked on a lot of things, a lot of stuff with Conservation Commission. He's appointed to the executive committee at NRPC right now as chairman, I believe. So I think it's a great representation for Merrimack and would certainly endorse his reappointment. Any other comments or a motion?
I'll move that we reappoint Tim Tenhave as Merrimack's representative to the Nashua Regional Planning Commission as recommended by the Merrimack Planning Board and pursuant to RSA 36:46, Roman 3.
Second?
And it's not the representative, it's one of
Yes,
3 or 4, I think, so.
it is 4, I believe.
Motion made by Finley and seconded by Nancy
Enthusiastically seconded.
enthusiastically. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Item number 2, Kathy Street, Brick Lane, and Constance Street drainage and right-of-way easements, submitted by Deputy Public Works Director / Town Engineer Don Tuamala. Town Council to consider the acceptance and drainage and right-of-way easements as part of this 19 subdivision plan for Level Acres 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair,
Please introduce yourselves.
for bringing this forward. Just real quick, Dawn's coming, we're doing this a little differently than we have in years past. Usually we accept everything at once, the drainage easements, the roads and things. However, Dawn will explain why we're doing this. Real quickly, we need these easements to pursue the road. What I would like to say is that the gentleman that's sitting here has ties to the DPW department. He was one of our first engineer interns. So I don't know if we trained him too well. But it's nice to see, I know Kyle's beaming back there because this is one of his first interns that comes up, and we must have done something right because he stayed in the business, so, but take it away, Dawn.
Thank you. So his name is Paul Chisholm, in case you
Thank you.
like
Hi,
to
Paul.
know.
Good evening.
It went past. Okay.
Computers.
This
They're
machine,
gonna be the death of us. They
absolutely.
happen to pay my salary,
Anyway,
but, you know.
To orientate you, we're up in the northern part of the town. This is Bedford Road in through here, and Kathy Street comes off of Bedford Road and goes up, and then this little piece down here is Brick Lane, and then it comes back into Constance. This was an old subdivision. It was begun in 1966. It was revised in 1977. At that time, this subdivision requirements were a lot different than they are today. So the road width in the subdivision at that point was only 40 feet. Today, we require 50 feet wide to be able to put our drainage and our shoulders and all of that sort of good stuff. You'll notice these areas that are highlighted in green, and that's the area that we're concerned about tonight. And if you remember, a couple of years ago, I did come before you for a discontinuance of Rita Street, which is this little piece down in here, which is also part of this Level Acres. The gentleman, I believe Mr. Foster, had passed away. Governor's Hill purchased all of the remaining lots that were within this subdivision, and they have been trying to build them out since. So the plan we are looking at tonight is on that far end on Kathy, Brick, and Constance. Let me see if I can get that centered a little bit. There we go. So there's two different types of easements we're looking at. One is road widening, and that is 5 feet on both sides of the road to make the road 50 feet wide. And then these blue areas coming out through here are drainage areas, and they've been working on improving the road. The road was accepted, Kathy Street was accepted up to this red line. I don't have the year and I don't remember it, but I will have it. This is only for accepting the easements tonight. This is not for accepting the road. They are not in a condition to be able to have the town accept the roads. But in order for them to be able to sell these lots, and they have been building the houses on these 3 lots here and 2 of the lots back here, they have to have these easements in place because they can't sell the lots otherwise, because the original subdivision did not have these easements in place. So there is a bond on all of the work that's being done. We had that put in place right in the beginning. So we do have that bond in place. I talked with the planning board. They do not feel that they needed to have any input in this because the subdivision was so old, and the DPW has been dealing with Paul through, for Governor's Hill in the upgrade of this section of Kathy Street, Brick Lane, and Constance. So we've been doing that for the last 2 years, basically. And again, we're not accepting the street, but we are accepting all of these little easement areas. And there's a lot of wetlands out here, which I do have another plan that shows all the wetlands, but the lines get very confusing, so we're gonna stay back at the
I
other
mean,
one.
it looks like Brick Street is going right through the wetlands.
Right, but it doesn't, but that's why it comes way outside. We also have an existing sewer easement that's out there, and our sewer line does run through all of this. It has. It comes down from the school area, from the Reed's Ferry School, comes down onto Constance, down into here, down Brick, and then it goes out into the big swamp out back and continues on. So that's there in existence, and we've had to work around that in a number of different ways. But yes, that is why you see this big area over here is because of the wetlands, and we tried to minimize the impact. Paul tried to minimize the impact, I didn't. So anyway, that's what we're asking for tonight, is just your acceptance, and then to be able to have Paul sign the actual deed when,
Not to
I'm
draw
the
this
Paul that
out.
needs to sign, not that Paul.
Right.
That's what she's talking about.
right, you're that Paul.
Yeah,
Town manager, I'm
manager.
sorry.
I would sign it today.
Not to
if
draw
we
it
were-
out on purpose, but, so tell us, what does it mean for us to accept an easement? Why do we have to do that? What's the purpose?
Because we're using this extra 5 feet for road widening purposes. And we're way off into the lot, over into here with our road. We need to have the actual deeds in order to be able to have our roads in that position. So when we go to do acceptance of the roads, we'll actually get the deeds for the roads themselves. But we need the easements because these houses are gonna be sold, they're ready to be sold, and they need to have those easements on them now before their
they're sold.
sale.
Or
Otherwise,
we have
we're
to
dealing with a-
negotiate with the new buyer.
Correct, and right now, we're only dealing with one person, or one company.
So, it looks like the roads were laid out in a very square fashion, and now you're not building them in that square fashion. Do we need to release those roads when that
No.
happens?
No,
Or-
we're keeping all of that's there.
But the road, Brick Lane, is going off of the area.
We're keeping all that's there. We are. There's wet in there, so the lots are staying as they are.
And
you can
just
see
have an
Brick
easement
Lane
that allows
is
you to
down
build
in
the road out there.
Yeah, yes,
I'm not trying to be
No.
difficult, but I don't understand. and so-
Right.
the sewer
The other thing is the sewer goes right through Brick.
Right.
So that, I mean, that
This
easement
easement.
obviously would remain, but
It's
it
right
just
here.
keeps it cleaner and there's less that can go wrong essentially if it's in a right of way.
we typically don't like to give up our right-of-ways unless we,
I understand. This off to the left, is that intended to be built someday, or?
no, that's all the big wetland area that's back there.
Okay, but it's still platted out,
unless
with
it's
roads and
miraculous.
stuff?
Right,
changes.
no, yeah, just to the left of Brick, there's actually a good chunk of wetland back there. We have discussed some different options in the future for what to do with it, but really that hasn't been the focus yet, because there's been other things that we've had to deal with first. At some point in the future, that may be a possibility where some of those lots are combined or whatever it is, but that's really kind of a discussion for a different day.
Okay, well, as you pointed out at least 3 times now, that this is only to accept the easements. And,
So these are, you're right, they were all laid out in a
I guess
grid
my,
pattern, and this is all the wet that's in through there.
yeah,
This
My-
is we call Phase 1 on Kathy Street side. There's a Phase 2 on the other side on Level Street, and there's actually a Phase 3 that's gonna be coming up that's down in this area over here, but we're not there yet.
but we're gonna discuss, releasing roads and stuff like that, or maybe we did on Old Blood, and things like that. Once a road is placed, don't we have to go through special things to get rid of them at some point in time?
If you need to, but we're not
We're not-
planning to in
we're
this
not there.
section.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm muddying the water. Does anybody else have any questions on accepting easements? Barbara, thank you.
I just want to validate that all of the lots where the easements are being shown, none of those lots right now are inhabited.
I don't believe that's the case. No, I think
No.
and again, I don't work for the contractor. I'm the engineer of record
Mhm.
for the project and in the road design specifically. But I don't believe anyone is living in those yet.
Okay,
Yep.
and for, we don't have to worry about Brick Road and all of that going on over there. The roads will be in place before the lots are sowed,
The
sold.
roads are in place, but they have not finished with the final coat.
Okay,
All of the infrastructure is in there, the drainage is in there,
Mhm.
the sewer is in there. It's all been accepted. But they have a few other remaining items outside of just the road that needs to be addressed.
okay.
They
And what
have-
does it mean when they have a bond in place?
When we start a project, I look at the overall, he provides me with the figures that are needed to, if we were to have to take over the whole road, we have a bond in place so that as the contractor, if they walk away and we need to do something, we can pull the bond and be able to cover the town for that. So I've created the bond form, he fills it out, it goes back and forth a number of times, he stamps it, and then Mr. Fox stamps it, and it goes to planning board, and they bless it, and there's a whole process that goes through in order to get a bond into place.
And just to make things just a little bit more confusing, you'll see, obviously, the areas of the road that were being improved really extend between the two red lines, if you will, kind of left down Brick and then to the right on Constance. There are a couple of lots to the right of the red line on the top part on Cathy Street, where the road has already been in place for many years. The 3 lots over to the right on there, where those didn't need any improvement for someone to build a house there or something like that. So it's also important to have that taken care of as well as part of this. So where it's all kind of together, that's just kind of another reason
Well,
to do it now.
It's not quite true, because we did have to extend the sewer up into here.
Oh,
In
right,
order,
yes,
because these
yes.
lots are so small, in order to build on them, they were required to have sewer.
Okay, but the easements are all on lots that have not been built on at this point. On the left side of Kathy, where there's, to the right
These
of that
three
red
houses have been under construction here.
line. No, I know, but to the right of the red line, there's no easement effort being put on the left side of
This,
the road,
this
right?
house is existing, I can't take anything from them. That's an existing house of record, it's been sold. This one here is also an existing house of record, and I can't take anything from them also.
And all those have septic
But we're
systems
not
as well.
taking anything, we're getting easements, right?
Correct.
Right, but you're still, we're
Well, I
still,
mean, you could still negotiate an easement from them if you cared to or needed to,
we could if we needed to.
but we don't.
We're not.
Okay.
All right, ask them to do it.
Andy?
For the new guy, is there any reason why the town shouldn't accept the easement? Okay.
I would have said no before.
Whether you were new or not, she's still gonna say no. Sorry. Good, no, that's a good question. I mean, it may be somebody will come back and say, yeah, you shouldn't do it, but,
Yeah, I mean, my level of knowledge on this, you know, the first thing I would do is look to who we hire as an expert and say, should I do this?
well, and he's not hired for us, he's
Yeah,
working
I'm
for,
I'm
He's
looking
working-
at Dawn.
oh, Don.
Yeah.
okay. Well, and you can see through all these emails and stuff that
Yep.
Don is definitely approving
I've been
all
working on
work.
this with him for
Oh,
at
it's
least
a
2
long
years
time,
now.
yeah, yep. It's been an interesting one, that's for sure.
Did you, any other question, Nancy?
I had 2 questions, a little bit unrelated, but related to the street. You said it's gonna be 50 feet wide on the top. Is that the width of the street now, Kathy, as it goes up?
It's not the pavement, it's the right-of-way.
Okay, the right of way, okay.
So our pavement is, we had 24
Yeah,
20 feet, 20
it kind of varies
Varies.
depending where you are, but it's roughly 22 to 24 feet
Okay, and,
existing today, yeah.
oh, thank you.
Our standard today is 24 feet wide of pavement.
Yep.
And then usually a couple feet of shoulder or sidewalks or whatnot. And then we use the other area, the other 13 feet, in order to be able to get proper drainage in there if we're having open drainage. And this one happens to be some closed, some open, so it varies. But 50 feet usually covers everything that we would need to be able to put
Yep.
in there, whether it's a utility, water, drainage, sewer, or whatever.
And the second question was, you said there's a sewer going to these new homes? They're
Yes.
not on septic. So will the people in that area be able to hook up at some
Yes.
point?
Yes,
Okay.
they will be receiving a letter very shortly. There's 4 homes that are within the distance,
Okay.
and they will be receiving a letter that they need to hook up within the next year.
Is it like north of the corner of Cabot and Kathy, or?
The sewer line actually now extends up to here.
I don't see where there is.
This lot way up the street. I can't read the number.
Don't
I'm not
even tell me a
close
number, I
enough.
can't read them either.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
a
just-
lot 160.
160. That this one. Okay.
Makes it up to there?
It makes it up
yeah.
to there. So it serves this house, and this house. That's as far as everything else to the, whatever that is, south. All of those lots have been sold, and they all have houses on them. And we didn't require them to go all the way down to Bedford Road with their improvements, so we only made them go up to that point there. There's a
Thank
lot of negotiation in this, believe me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank
Okay.
you.
So, I guess we're looking for a motion to accept the easements as outlined in the documentation.
So moved.
And to allow the town
Second.
And
manager
to
to
allow the
sign.
town manager to sign any and all
Thank you.
appropriate paperwork.
So moved again.
That you moved by Barbara Healy, seconded by Andy?
Yeah.
Andy. Seconded by Andy. If there's no other questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstained? That passes 700. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But wait,
There's more.
But wait, there's more.
so item number 3, again with Don Tomala, is the consideration of acceptance of a portion of Old Blood Road. And this is a road acceptance.
Yes, and this is a road acceptance, yes.
Thank God.
So you can't get rid of me tonight quite yet.
Didn't want to do that.
I did see you last night. As a matter of fact, you were the last one up, wasn't she?
He was watching on
Yeah.
TV.
Shoot.
So just to give you an orientation on where we're at, this is McQuestion Road here. This is Wilson Hill Road coming down this section here. And this is the section of Old Blood Road that got paved last year. All the way
Thank
down
God.
to the end down here. This area over here is the Chestnut Hill Acres that's being subdivided out through here. That they're working on all of those roads. The school, the middle school, is up here where this Old Blood Road, which is the old dirt road, it's a class 6, join into Madeline Bennett. It's just up off the screen. I couldn't fit it all in on the paper, so. So this one was a compilation of several different subdivisions, actually. And we're talking about the last 1,210 feet of road on Old Blood Road. So this side over here on the east side, in the area that I highlighted in green, is known as the Prince Subdivision. Just to add a little bit of confusion to this, there was another lot over here from the Old Blood Road properties, a subdivision, and this one was the one, as you were saying, on dedications, and a whole lot of things happened in the past that they have had to come before you. So anyway, this is the Prince subdivision that had the 3 lots. And you can see this section of Old Blood Road here was put onto their property. This section down here, which you can barely see, is the old Class 6. At this time, which was in 2000, they started this subdivision in 2004. I believe they got final approval in 2007. So it took them a few years to get through this. So this created the 3 lots over here and moved the road over into this section here. This is the area that we need to, or you need to approve and accept tonight. In doing the other side of this subdivision, there was another subdivision plan, it went right past. So this is on the west side, this lot over here, and it was called the Old Blood Properties LLC, and this was the beginning part of Chestnut Hill. And you can't quite see it real well, but there's a section of Old Blood Road in here. There was undedications, and there was another road going up this way, and that was undedicated also. And there was a whole number of things. And as you can see, there was no real definition on both sides that was cohesive to define what Old Blood Road was. So that became very apparent when I asked for an as-built plan this year or last year, actually, to know that we have the road that we were, it's one of our conditions. We ask for an as-built plan so we know what we've got out there and that it's been built according to plan. So this raised a whole lot of questions to me and also to the town attorney when I presented it to her, and they presented me with the deed. So I got kind of, I made them do more work, I'm sorry. But, so what I had them do, because it was hard for me as a licensed land surveyor to understand the plans, and they gave me 3 plans to look at and try to put together, and I'm like, I can't.
That's not your job.
A normal, a regular person looking in the registry would have absolutely no idea in going through all of this. So we have recently gotten this new plan, and the area that is highlighted in red is what you are accepting tonight, and that's what the deed says now that we've got tonight. And I've kind of highlighted this in the gray. You're also accepting the easements for drainage as they come out for all of these properties. So this is what we're actually asking for tonight. So in this particular case, I did have to go for planning board approval because it was within a realm of time that, we had to do. So I did put in a request to planning board, and they have to have a maintenance bond in place. Well, the original bond for the entire property, which we were just talking about when you start a project, was $115,000 and change. Got to remember, this was back in 2004, so it's been a number of years, so the numbers are a little bit less than what they are today. We had done a reduction a couple of years ago in their performance bond because they had put a lot of the infrastructure in place, so they had now had a bond of $60,000. As part of the acceptance, they are required to have a maintenance bond for the next 2 years. So if something goes mechanically wrong, so to speak, out there, we will have a bond in place to be able to have it fixed if they don't come back and fix. So that bond number is $11,535. The planning board, this is their minutes, and they voted 5-0-0 for acceptance of this new bond, to have this bond put into place. So as soon as I talked to John Tenhave this afternoon, and he will, if you do grant him acceptance, he will bring in the check for the $11,000 to be able to hold as the bond tomorrow. That's what he told me he would do. So, there we go. There's my letter asking for the planning board for that acceptance. So, and I spelled out the numbers and why and wheres and all of that sort of stuff. The other thing that I did do was I put all of this to the town attorney. And he's fine with the plan now. It now meets the meets and bounds. They read properly. The deed reads the same as the plan reads. So we're very happy with that. I didn't get the deed until like 3:30, 4 o'clock today. So I have sent the last revisions, and he had some revisions, but they were misspellings and that type of thing. It was not terribly substantive, excuse me. But, so I feel that I still, it will be fixed, and we would like to have acceptance of the road and to be able to have the town manager sign that.
Okay. And
Oh, I did send out letters of abutters to all of these abutters that were directly abutters in through here that were affected by this, because there are people that own along the side, so I did do that.
so just briefly, what does acceptance do for the road?
We have not been plowing this,
Okay,
so we will now begin plowing this.
out to the hammerhead here?
Correct.
Okay. And you said it meets all the town standards, so it must be acceptable to the fire department as far as turnaround of trucks and all that kind of stuff?
They go through their approval process right in the beginning when as part of the subdivision process.
I actually know the answers to a lot of that stuff, but I'm asking, one, for the public, and two, because we have some newer members, just making sure everybody feels comfortable that we're doing the right kinds of things. So,
And I forget because I do it every day, so
Yeah.
thank you for reminding me.
Does anybody have questions on accepting this? Barbara's got one question. You know all about it.
I do. And there were no drainage issues, right? Because this was kind of funky for, like you say, for a while.
He was in the mathematics for me, but
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Okay.
it's good.
No surprises.
Okay.
I would have heard about it by now.
Okay.
And I sat on the planning board when we discontinued these roads in multiple directions and added different roads. It was quite an interesting project.
It was
Try and go through all-
hard going through all of the bits and pieces because I was not with you at this time.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, what the heck are they talking about? So,
Finley, did you have a question?
I did. It's not really probably important for me for tonight, but since you're here and I can ask you, I was just curious, why did they deviate Old Blood Road in the first place? Was it just so that the Captain Bannon Circle would line up properly for them going into that?
it was done a long time
okay.
before the Chestnut, so I don't know, I wasn't here, but I assume that was probably a better location. There might be some wetlands out in the back there.
Oh, very good. It was a curiosity thing.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of issues there that just required that, and it was not gonna be possible to make Old Blood Road to go through due to wetlands and
Right.
encroachments and every other thing, so they decided to cut it off and then go the other way to develop Chestnut Hill and stuff like that.
Yeah, very.
Okay, now you ready?
Now I'm ready.
Go for it.
Okay. Move to accept the last 1,210-foot section of Old Blood Road as presented and allow the town manager to sign whatever documentation is necessary.
Second.
Is 1,210 the right number? I thought it was 1,250, but
Well, it's what's
1,210
presented
is
What's
what's
here.
on the
listed there.
plan,
Okay.
as
Good.
recorded with the deed.
Okay. Is there any other, so a motion was made by Nancy and seconded by Lon to accept this portion of Old Blood Road. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 700. Thank you, Don, appreciate it.
Now you can get rid of me.
Good night,
Appreciate your
Don.
patience with some of my inquisitiveness.
Good to see you again.
We won't see her now for another 8 months.
At least.
No, probably next week, I don't know.
Uh, Item number 4 is a wastewater treatment facility upgrade Phase 5 discussion. Town council to be presented with the wastewater treatment facility Phase 5 upgrade. This upgrade consists of items that were removed from the initial Phase 3 and 4 upgrades approved by the voters removed due to cost considerations.
Right. As you're aware, we, over several years, have tried to upgrade the current wastewater treatment plant, and we're currently undergoing a $22 million upgrade. As you know, a year ago, we went out, we got the bids in, and the bids were substantially higher than what we went out for and got approval for bonds. So we had to do some cost-cutting measures and think about how we're going to do things. One of those ways we were going to do something, we were going to use some of the ARPA money to do a screenings building. When we went back to the vendor, I think we did that in July. We did on July, I think, 10th or something of that sort. The vendor gave us, we'll hold it till July 5th. When we went back to the vendor and he went back to his electrical company, the electrical company said, "Oh, I can't do it for that anymore. Now the screenings building's $2.7 million." Coincidentally, that's what we got for ARPA money. So Sarita and Kyle came to me and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "We're not doing that. Let's hold off and see what's going on." Well, in infinite visions, yeah, I'm talking finance software. In infinite wisdom, we got our money, the state got their money. The state didn't come out with rules. So we went back to the state and said, "Hey, now you got your money. We got this project that is shovel-ready. It hasn't even broken ground yet. Can we get any relief for the $22 million? State hemmed and hawed through the summer, came back and said, no, that's an approved project. If you want the $2 billion that you can get for this ARPA money, you have to have another project. You know, like, okay, but we already got a project and it's shovel ready and we haven't started. He said, you already got all your approvals in place. So I looked with Sarita and we put our heads together and we said, all right, so in order to get $2 million from federal money from the state, we'd have to do a $10 million project. Knowing that we cut several things out that Sarita will discuss out of the original bond because of cost concerns, what would that look like? So then we said, okay, we'll put the $2.3 million that we have plus the $2 million, that's $4 million, and we'll get a bond for $6 million. State comes back and says, nope, you can't combine the $2 million with other ARPA money to get the full $2 million. If you did that, you'd only get $1.4 million of this money. So without stealing much more of Sarita's thunder, I'll let her go through it, but there has been a lot of thought process behind what we bring forward and how we look at bringing forward a project phase 5 of the wastewater plant, because we know the people and the users of the sewer system have approved 2 large bonds, and this would be another large bond to be approved for the completion of a project that when we started these projects in the costing, that's what came out, $22 million. But because of COVID, because of supply chain issues, because of wage issues, the price has escalated to over $7 million more than what we had at the time. Construction costs are going up roughly 29% over a year ago. And we're looking at that inflationary measures when we put some of these numbers together as well that you'll see in this presentation. But I didn't want to bring this to the council and say, like, next Wednesday we have debt service. I don't want to come back and say, hey, council, oh, by the way, here's this. I wanted to come forward with this item and the next item and present to the council so that you get an idea and be able to ask your questions and get an understanding of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish with bringing these 2 bonds forward at this time. So Sarita, why don't you take it away?
So thank you, Mr. McCallie. I really appreciate that opening. When we started this process, we never thought that we would be here with a Phase 5 upgrade. And I just want the public and all of you to realize that our primary goal is to clean wastewater so that we can discharge this water to the Merrimack River and provide clean drinking water to the public. So with that goal in mind and the fact that we all are very, very, very passionate about the fact that we want to provide this clean drinking water, we continue this effort to make sure that the plant, which is now 52 years old, infrastructure will be completely upgraded. So it's been a while since I've been here, and I thought it might be a good idea to present an overview of the wastewater treatment plant, review, even though Mr. McCallie reviewed the bid price and the budget, review it again, and then review the components of the Phase 5 project recommendation, and then perhaps we could have some questions and discussions. So back in, I think it was the first time I came to you was probably 2018. I talked about the wastewater treatment plant. I talked about how the operations work. It's interesting, in 2017, our average flow was 1.74 million gallons per day. In 2020, our average flow dropped to 1.54 million gallons per day. And last year, in 2021, our average flow was 1.61 million gallons per day. We have something called an NPDES permit. That is a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Permit. It's with US EPA. They give us permit limits in that permit, and there is actually a requirement in that permit to maintain our infrastructure to meet our permit requirements. One of the biggest challenges we face, oh, I forgot to bring those up. I'm so sorry. So one of the big challenges we face is flushable wipes. We still have the 2 jars. Can you go get the 2 jars?
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
I'm so sorry. I completely forgot.
I'll believe it.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So one of the biggest challenges that we have are flushable wipes, and I'll talk a little bit about it later. When wastewater comes into the wastewater treatment plant, it comes to this area called preliminary that I'm circling here. That's our main pump station. The wastewater comes in, it separates out oil and grease, and the really big stuff will settle out over there. Then the wastewater actually pumps around the plant and it goes to our primary clarifiers. Now in primary clarifiers, what we do is we separate the sand and the solids that settle from the water. Then the water is pumped up a hill and it goes to what we call secondary and advanced treatment. In the secondary treatment, what we use is microorganisms to actually eat the organics and actually treat nutrients. So one of the things that we do at the wastewater treatment plant is we remove phosphorus. Once we've had the microorganisms do their work, it goes to what we call secondary clarification. So there we actually separate the microorganisms from the water again. Now the final phase is disinfection. Just like we all use bleach wipes at home to clean off our countertops, we use bleach in the wastewater treatment plant to kill the pathogens. And to be honest with you, the number one reason why these plants are so effective is because we kill the pathogens. So we're not sending all of these diseases back to the waterway for people to take it in drinking water. Now, concurrent with the water processes, we also have a solids process. So the solids that we collect in the secondary clarifier and the primary clarifier goes for dewatering, and then we go to our biosolids handling facility. In the biosolids handling facility, what we do is we mix the sludge that's dewatered with sawdust, we heat it up, and we create what we call a compost, a Class A biosolid, and we market this product. What the good news about this product is it offsets the cost of us disposing of our sludge off-site. So the town graciously, in the bond vote in April 2019, approved $13.1 million, and they graciously again approved in the bond of 2020 $9.52 million for a total of $22.62 million. As Mr. McCallie said, unfortunately, things did not pan out when we went to bid, and the project actually came back over the base bid, $5.5 million over the base bid. And if you've put all the remaining components in, which also included a sawdust building, the total project from the construction cost piece of it came over, was over by $8.2 million. So we had this massive dilemma that we came and we presented to you, and we had to figure out what we were going to do. And what we realized, because the plant at that point in time was 51 years old, that we needed to start upgrading some components of the plant because it was starting to have some significant issues. And to give you an idea, we can't find spare parts for 52-year-old equipment. For our electrical components, we typically will go on eBay to try and locate those parts. Sometimes we'll be able to put in new pieces of equipment, but then it becomes a little bit of a dilemma because you don't want to spend a lot of money putting in new equipment when you're going to be replacing it with completely new infrastructure. So we didn't want to waste the money. Well, by doing or engaging in a reduced project, which included the main pump station, those clarifier mechanisms, emergency generators, sludge holding tanks, piping upgrades, and the two oldest pump stations, which are Sohegan and Thornton's Ferry, we took out some pretty major components. The new screenings building, that's where in March of 2019 we came to the deliberative sessions with 2 jars. One had toilet paper, it broke up really well. The other one had a flushable wipe. I am pleased to report that the flushable wipe is still intact. So that flushable wipe still has not degraded in that jar almost, 3 years later. And if you look over here at these photographs, these are operators in our sludge storage tanks actually physically shoveling out these flushable wipes that are wrapped around the diffusers in the tank to remove it. Now, our staff will go in several times a year to actually execute this job. This is one of the most hazardous jobs that we have at the plant, and clearly not a fun job. And in 2022, we have the technology to not have to go in several times a year. And the screenings building would help us do that. What it would do is it would remove these wipes. We get Lysol wipes now, we get diapers, we get all sorts of things in. It would remove all of these things before the wastewater goes through the plant. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the compost facility. So now, as I mentioned, the compost facility helps offset the cost of our sludge disposal. And one of the things that we have to do at the compost facility is we have to maintain the ventilation. So last night we spoke about a biofilter, and that biofilter has 6 fans that force the air out of the building to the biofilter. And as part of this project, we were going to replace those 6 fans, as well as replace some ventilation that had not been replaced as part of the Phase 2 upgrade. The wash water system is not something I've talked about before, and the reason I haven't spoken about it was because it really isn't a compliance issue, but it provides you an example of how we manage what we do there. So I had mentioned that we have 1.612 million gallons of water that we treated every day in 2021. Well, about 350,000 gallons a day of this treated water that has been chlorinated is sent back to the facility and used as process water. Now, if we were to use Pennachuck water instead of the plant effluent return, it would cost us about $1,800 a day, which would be upwards of $680,000 a year. So to give you an example, this wash water piping system, although not directly related to compliance, is really important in order to keep our costs down. And in December, we actually had a break in the system, and we had to complete an emergency repair. And what we realized when we did that emergency repair is the wash water system is in tough shape, as is many of the other things at the plant. The Headworks building, we have asbestos tile. It's not ADA compliant. The men's bathroom and locker room is circa 1970. There is no ladies' locker room. And the lab is very much in dire need of an upgrade as well. One thing I didn't mention last year and the year before when I spoke about the lab is we have a lab hood in the plant. Well, it doesn't really work. And there's about 6 inches of space between the lab hood and the bench that's right next to it. So it's really hard to actually use that hood. So what we'd like to do is reconfigure the lab and actually have some space available for the stormwater program so they can use it to do their analysis, and that could offset some of their costs. This is just some photographs of some of the items that we're doing. This comes from the design over here, the screenings building. This is the wash water system, which is in the basement of the chlorine building. This is the lab, a little picture of the men's locker room. And this is just a picture of the compost building. The exhaust in compost is very corrosive, so it pretty much eats everything that's there. So now to the best part of this presentation, costs. So what we did is we worked with Methuen and we worked with Wright Pierce, who are engineers, to develop this cost. And as Mr. McCallie pointed out, in 2021, March, the cost for the screenings building was $2.3 million. Well, today, the cost of the screenings building is estimated at $3.2 million, and as he said, it's the rising cost of materials and transportation, it's inflation, it's labor shortages, and we're expecting that the infrastructure bill will not help our cause. There's going to be a lot more work out there as the entire country is facing this, because all of these plants are turning 50-plus years old. There's going to be a lot more work out there than there are companies and people to do it, so that might also drive the prices up. If we were to accept this project, we would go to bid after vote. If the town was gracious enough to approve it, we would go to vote, we would get the bids, and then after we get the bids, we would actually go and we would apply for the loan for the amount that we're requesting. As Mr. McCallie said, the town received $2.774 million as part of the American Rescue Plan Act stimulus package. Well, the state also received money, and what they did is they contacted and they reached out to all of the municipalities for clean water funding, where they have projects for things like a wastewater treatment plant. And the purpose was to make these facilities apply for the SRF loan, so submit a pre-application, and that's what we did. So everything that we weren't able to do as part of the Phase 3, Phase 4 upgrade, we placed in this SRF loan package, and we have been pre-approved for a 20% ARPA grant up to $2 million. So with that ARPA grant, we would be requesting a loan, or we'd be applying for a loan of $8.1 million. As with our previous debt repayments, the money for this project will not come out of property taxes. It comes out of sewer user fees. And this is just an example of a 20-year loan repayment at 2.5% interest. My understanding is that the feds are going to be raising the interest rate. The current interest rate on the project is 2%, and it would likely go up by the time we were to apply for the loan. One final note that I wanted to make was there are two components of the project that I have not discussed here. And those two components have to do with other things in the chlorine building. So it's an electrical upgrade as well as some sludge pumping. And I have not talked about the sawdust building. And I'd like to, with your permission, come back to you again to discuss that aspect of the project as we're trying to investigate what our options are there.
And that's in addition to the Phase 5?
Yeah.
That's Phase 6, 5B?
Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Let's see what happens.
We're hoping that it would not be a bond issue. We're trying to get costs right now from a contractor for the storage facility for our sawdust and these other small upgrades to the chlorine building to see what they are. And we'd weigh our options of capital reserve funds or asking for some ARPA funds to do this project, to do those two projects. I won't call them little, but in the scale of things, they're much smaller in scale than the current $20, $30 million renovations that we have on the table for the plant itself.
Paul, when you introduced this, you were talking about 2.7 ARPA funds and 2 million, and at the end of the day here, I don't see any of that falling out here. I see a 2 million from the state.
Yeah, the 2 million from the state, we are, if we did go and use some of the ARPA funds as well, the state match would go down. If we use the $2.3 million, the state match would go down to $1.4 million. The bond would be around $6.5 million. So we could definitely use that. Just know that we would be reducing the state grant, which is money that is set aside from the federal government.
The money we got was set aside by the federal government.
By the federal government
right?
as well.
Do we
So-
have other uses for that at this point, or?
One of the uses, like I said, is potentially the sawdust building and the upgrade to the chlorine building. Looking at those two facilities. The other thing would be, we don't have money set aside or projects right now saying this is what we're looking at to do with that money. The new rules came out yesterday or the day before.
Another set, huh?
With it from the Treasury, changing the rules, and revenue loss is something we can use the ARPA money for.
Revenue lost.
Revenue loss. We have not looked at that yet. However, it's a potential, and there's a formula that we can go through to look at it. But like I said, this is something that came out just recently with, this is what you can do, because some of the rules were, they have to be approved projects. You can use it for this, but not that. This came out, I think, Tom, were you on call today or a webinar? Was that the webinar that I walked in on, or was that another one?
That was something different.
Something different, okay, sorry. So, but there's webinars out there that we have to get familiarized what we can actually, use that for, but revenue lost, if we do have revenue lost and things of that sort, that's been going around the state with the managers group right now about communities looking at revenues lost and using some of that money, so there's a lot of different things we can use that money for, but there's nothing we have right now that is earmarked anymore for that money.
Okay. With Finley?
Thanks, Rita. We had done our rate adjustments and so on based on our original, phase, 3 and 4, I guess.
Yeah.
What type of impact is this gonna have on our rate structure now, or is it?
We would be okay with the current rate structure we have in place right now. We are in the process of doing a new rate study that we'll be bringing forward in the springtime. But that was one of my questions that I asked. Will this affect the rates? And right now, the rates that we had in place and the rate structure that we put in place for 3 and 4 would continue right now.
Because this is a substantial chunk
Right.
of cash.
Well, the
Yeah,
other thing too is the other thing is that we we were proactive in implementing a rate increase because of the way the bond or the way the money was coming. Because we combined the two bonds together, we delayed the project for a year. So we have some additional money set aside from combining those two
Okay,
projects together. And the delay of the construction to get somebody here also helped with some of that money going into a fund balance to help with the rates going forward, and this would not affect it, because that was one of my things. I said, we went to the council, we went to the public, we said, these are gonna be your rates for the next 5 years. Can the fund support it? And the answer is yes, the fund can support it.
I'm surprised, but I'm happy. I'm very surprised.
Yeah.
Well, because of the $2 million and pushing the payment out a little bit, so that we were able to get, help with how it is.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rita.
Barbara, did you have questions?
Well, that was one of them. My other one is, it's when we started this project, and every time we go out to bid, the pricing has increased like 3 times, 4 times. Is there anything in your proposal that can be delayed with the hope that pricing comes down? Now, I was thinking about this a little more while we were sitting here, and I'm thinking like, well, there's all of these infrastructure projects that they will be releasing money for, and if the rest of the Biden's infrastructure plan goes through. So I'm wondering, I guess I'm answering my own question, is that with all the infrastructure projects coming through, estimates are probably going to be maybe 5, 6, 7 times more than they are now.
So it's expected that the cost will increase again substantially when the infrastructure money becomes available, primarily because there aren't enough people to do it. And the materials, to say that material costs have escalated is the understatement of the century. I mean, if you take a look at this, in 1 year, we've increased the cost of the screenings building by $900,000, which is incredible. If you had asked me last year that this would happen, I would never have said it. And nobody has seen this type of escalation.
Well, we got a cash cow going on here right now.
Yes.
And they're taking advantage.
And the other thing is that we did with these numbers that we brought forward, we escalated these numbers. So we looked at what they are today, and then we put a factor of 29% on top of most of them to come up, because we're talking 4 or 5 months, and
Yeah, it's gonna take a while.
it's going to, that's if we get approved on April 10th. It takes about 2 months before we go through the SRF paperwork. So before we can even get a shovel in the ground, it won't be until July.
Right.
So we're talking 6, 7 months from now. So we're estimating a little bit higher when this comes through. The one good thing is that we do have a company on site in some of these projects. Because we have the company on site, we can combine with other projects, which will keep the cost low, because if we had to bring somebody in to do some of this stuff after this project is done, these costs would be much, much higher.
Because you repay the mobilization cost, yep.
Right.
And
But we're going out for bids.
Yes, we're
on
gonna
this
go
work.
out for bid, and we're gonna make them sharpen their pencil. We're not just giving this $10 million or whatever we get to, the contractor. We'll go out to bid, so they sharpen their pencil, but with other things.
If I remember correct, Sarita, part of the difficulty is is that there are only a limited number of companies that actually do this kind of work.
Correct.
And a lot of the waste treatment plants are a similar age.
Yes.
So they're all coming together at this pivotal time. So it's, for them,
There's a lot of work out
That's the dilemma
there.
we have.
Yeah. So just to give you an example, Portsmouth just finished a $100 million upgrade, and I actually went to see that plant. I mean, all the plants in the state of New Hampshire are engaging in upgrades. Manchester is upgrading, Concord is upgrading. Everybody's upgrading their plants right now because all of them are about the same age,
Which makes it
and all
harder.
of them are in the same situation.
So that makes
Okay.
it harder too, yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Paul?
I was just saying, like I said, we just wanted to bring this forward so the council can see it and ask the questions that, the questions that have been asked, and if there's anything else, before we just bring it in and say, oh, by the way, we're looking at doing X, Y, Z with bonds. This is also, if we move this forward, Sarita and Kyle will take the show on the road again to explain why we have to do the project and what this means. If the council so sees fit, next Wednesday, we'll be going over debt service. If the council sees fit to include it in the warrant, they will be taking the show on the road to do their presentations of this. I do want to mention one more time, this is paid by user fees, 100% user fees of the sewer plant. And we do not expect to change what we presented about rate increases over those 3 or 4 or 5 years period, which we look at every other year of increasing the rate. So we are still, what we said back in 2018 when we started this, those rates are looking the same going forward.
So 5 years, that's next year.
Next year, right?
So that's, the rate study will be.
The rate study will be done at probably springtime, if not early summer.
So
I'm
hopefully the rate study is done sooner, I'm hoping.
But yes, I'm giving them a little lead time.
Thank you.
Yeah, the person who did our rate study last time's retired, so they had to bring somebody else in. So we're looking at it, we're finalizing it, so probably spring, summer. We'll be bringing forward the rate study to the council. And really what the rate study is looking at, it isn't looking at anything else except, when we talked about that $2 million line for fund balance, the rate study's looking at where our fund balance line should be.
Right.
And Sarita and Kyle showed me a chart today, going out, I don't know, 12, 20 years, and we're good, for the most part. In the very, very, very out year, we might be off maybe a couple $100,000 of it, so, but that's over a 20-year period, so, but right now, we're looking at it, and we're looking at the, what we have, and we're not planning on increasing it more than what we said. What are we at? What is next year's sewer rate gonna be, Sarita?
So we have one more 12% increase, and then we have a 5%, and we're done. So we had.
Is your,
Oh, I'm sorry. I have it here, so. I beg your pardon?
$340 is the sewer rate for next year.
it's
Um,
306.
She has all the 304 now.
It's 304 now. So 22, 23, there is no rate increase. 23, 24, it's 340. 24, 25, there is no rate increase. And then in 25, 26, it's 357.
And
So
no-
we're doing alternated years. So the rate increase in 23, 24 is a 12% increase. The rate increase in 25, 26 is a 5% increase.
And we're continuing with those rate increases, and we are still one of the lowest user fees rates for sewer in the state.
Barbara?
Yeah, thank you, because that was my question, was how does that put us against other municipalities? You know, are they, while we're sitting here talking, also increasing their sewer fees as well? And where does that leave, you know, on the scale of, you know, who's, you know, more or less?
So back in 18, we were the 5th lowest in the state out of, I think it was 82 communities or something like that. I will tell you that Nashua, a year and a half ago, had a 20% increase in their sewer rates, and they're talking about another sewer rate increase. And most communities are increasing their sewer rates. And one of the reasons is because early on in this whole program with the Clean Water Act, when we were building all of these plants, they were all brand new, and they didn't, in theory, need a lot of help with the infrastructure. And we kept kicking the can down the road in terms of maintenance for them, in terms of replacement. So if you even look at us, for the first 30 years, we really didn't do anything to the plant, and then all of a sudden we're trying to play catch up. And with 30 years being the useful life of some of the equipment, now in our case it's lasted 50 years, and with good maintenance programs you can, but with 30 years being the useful life, you want to have a robust maintenance program that will maintain this investment that we have, and that's why you need the rates. You need to have the money to be able to do all of those things. Did I answer your question? Okay.
I think so. You were concerned, you're saying we were 4th or 5th lowest
Yes.
before we did these rate increases, and when you were showing that to the people, you were putting us up at 7th or 8th
Yes.
after the rate increases, but that wasn't taking anybody else's increases into effect. So we
That's
may still be 4th or 5th.
We may be lower.
Because or maybe even lower,
Yeah.
because other people must be raising their rates as well. And
Yeah,
and
they
you
are.
stated several examples of places that definitely are.
Yeah.
So there's nothing we have to do at this point, because you're going to bring this back and,
Yes, it was more of a
it in the budget.
presentation for your information, so next week when I bring this forward, you're not looking at me saying, what are you doing?
be warned.
May I
Yes.
mention just one more thing? The midpoint rate back in 2018 was a little over $500 a year. So if you take a look at what I had just said, $340 is still well under the midpoint in the state
From a couple of years ago, yeah.
from a couple of years ago, yeah.
Okay. Super, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. And you always have such well-prepared.
I
Stuff
wish
to-
you would
to
have
present.
brought the sample.
I am very
Wow.
sorry, very, very sorry.
You can,
Buying, right? Frenzy. We're buying the
we'll
Christmas.
get them in front of the public again, so.
Christmas present, when everyone wants.
You can put them up here at our
Exactly.
next council meeting. and-
When I see you and I have
And it's not a Christmas present. It's a
son by yelling at him,
toilet. It's something you need. It's not something you can put up.
He's like,
Yeah.
It's not a want to.
$2 million hedge from the
Okay.
state makes it
Thank you very much.
mean.
And now the thing we've all been waiting for, and appreciate the patience of the fire department.
So horrible.
Number 5, the Merrimack Fire Rescue Ladder Truck, submitted by the Fire Chief Mark DeFranzo. The Town Council to consider the purchase of a new ladder truck for the replacement of the current 2002 American LaFrance ladder truck. In addition, the council will receive financing options to purchase the new ladder truck.
So, going forward, we've had a lot of discussion over the years whether the town of Merrimack needs a ladder truck.
Now
We have a ladder truck in Nashua, we have a ladder truck in Bedford, we have a ladder truck in Amherst,
Manchester.
in Manchester. At the time when we were talking about whether or not we needed a ladder truck, things have changed. The landscape of Merrimack has changed. We have 4 or 5 apartment buildings now that have gone in, where if there is a fire, a ladder truck would be very useful. Sitting in on the chief's interview with the chiefs and how they would use a ladder truck to fight fire has changed. They can get the ladders out, guys can climb up the ladders, things of that sort. It takes manpower to bring a ladder. To bring a ladder to go up 100 feet, you need about 6 firefighters to move that ladder, to put it on the side of the building, to get them up there. Now you're climbing up a ladder with a hose on your back and trying to fight the fire. If the ladder truck, we have platforms on ours, and you can use the gun to shoot down on the fire and fight the fire from above versus fighting the fire from below. The other thing that has changed, and the chief can answer this question for me, is that we have heard that a fire doubles in size every 30 to 45 seconds, roughly.
With today's, combustible materials that we all buy at the dollar store, it's faster than that.
Right. So waiting for another community to send a ladder truck could be significant property damage or other loss of life with it if we, having to throw ladders up or things of that sort. So the other thing is we usually buy this equipment out of capital reserve funds, and the question is, why didn't we be planning for this? Because of the conversations that we were having at the time in the landscape of Merrimack, that our ladder truck, we could still use our ladder truck. We only had one building or a couple buildings in town that we needed the ladder truck to go out to if there was fires at those locations. So a couple years ago, we made the determination that we needed 2 engines because our engines were getting old, and this is just cyclical. This is an American LaFrance. American LaFrance is no longer in business. What American LaFrance did is they basically every part on that truck is proprietary. Thank you. Proprietary, tongue twister. Proprietary. Even though we can get for case in point, the back windows on an electric switch. The electric switch went out. I could call up Peterbilt and get the same switch as our guys were doing. Peterbilt said, I can't sell you that. So a switch that was in stock at Peterbilt that we could get the next day took us almost 4 weeks to get, because somebody bought all the parts for American LaFrance, which was a French company overseas, and now we had to get the parts shipped in. So it's getting more difficult to get parts for the ladder truck. The other thing is that the days of service on this ladder truck for repairs are extended. We had to replace the knuckle, and when I call it the knuckle, and the chief will talk a little bit more, it's the pivoting point that makes the ladder go up and pivot around. We had to replace that. The ladder truck was out of service for a lot of, I want to say almost, last year was almost 144 days. And most of that was due to that knuckle. And when we got it back, when we were testing it, the hydraulics went on it. So we had to replace the hydraulics, which took time to figure out where the problem was to replace the hydraulics on the truck as well. We've asked equipment maintenance to go through the truck and give us their estimate on whether, like we do with a lot of our vehicles, to say, hey, is this truck worth saving? They gave us our estimates, which the chief will go through as well. So I know I'm stealing some of his thunder on the slides, but I'll let him go through his presentation. But I wanted to give the council and the people at home just a quick background of why we were looking at things. And the options that we did look at is a leasing option through the company that we're looking at purchasing one from, or a bond, and a 5-year bond. And the 5-year bond is actually cheaper for us to go through than to lease the vehicle from the company itself. Because interest rates, borrowing interest rates are a lot lower. Now, when in 6 months, they might be, a little bit higher, but that also means the leasing options will be up as well. So, without further ado, Chief?
Thank you. Yeah, he's pretty much given my whole presentation. You guys have it. He pretty much just described all of the slides to you, so, but we'll go through it, and if you have questions as we go, I'm fine with that. I have Assistant Chief Brechtel with me, just in case there's something that I'm not that familiar with. Again, I'm still new to the department, still trying to learn everything. But I certainly know about, fire trucks and apparatus and, the uses and unfortunately the costs of some of this stuff. So we'll go through this. So ladder one replacement. So, how long has the town had a ladder truck? Because obviously back, umpteen years ago, it was a small little town, a few thousand people, not much going on. Well, in 1972, things had changed in Merrimack. The fire department thought that, hey, we need a ladder truck to help used on rescues and fires and other types of things. So the first truck was bought in 1972, and it was a used truck. It was a 1947 Maxim. So the thought was, well, let's see, do we need a ladder truck? Can we make this thing work? Well, obviously, the ladder truck was something that was needed, because then about 8 years later, the department said they needed a new truck. They spec'd one out, purchased one in 1980, and that was to, again, and using some quotes from past articles and things, it was to improve the department's ability to combat fires in high-rise buildings. So that was back in 1980. In 2002, obviously, the 1980 truck had seen its useful life. It was time to move on to a new truck. At that time, in 2002, the town chose to purchase an American LaFrance, and that's what we currently have. So, like the town manager said, it is made by American LaFrance. The company went out of business in 2014, and like he described, parts availability is difficult to non-existent. And some of the things that, a lot of people don't understand is when a product is no longer made by a manufacturer, they still have to continue to make parts and supply parts for up to 5 or 10 years, depending upon what the product is. But when a company goes out of business, they're not obligated to make any parts, keep anything. They're out of business, they're gone. So trying to get parts for this truck is next to impossible if you can even get it. And if you do get them, they're probably used. And now you're taking a risk of even using those types of parts. So again, the age of the truck is 19 years old. It's going on 20. So it's really time for us to look at what do we need to do next. And again, the town manager described out of service times. Unfortunately, we're not very good at record keeping. So we only went back about 2 years, and we're not confident these are really as accurate as we'd like them to be. But in 2020, the truck was out of service 19 times for 66 days. And like he described, in 2021, when the turntable swivel joint had the issue, it was out for 140 days total, and it was 8 different times that it was out. But the big length of time was trying to have the turntable repaired. And again, I had to learn the history about this truck. So that's when I say that, it's been out of service quite a bit due to a lot of different issues over the lifetime of this truck that this town has owned it. So some believe the truck out of service time is more than what we've got documented. And even in previous years, the truck has spent quite a bit of time out of service. So, and again, I apologize that the data collection isn't where we'd like it to be, but, 15 years ago, we really didn't do a lot of that. So we will get better as we go forward, but that's kind of where we're at. So cost of repairs. And again, we did a 5-year window look, which, again, as I learned about the truck, was probably not enough of a window look. So that's why the slides that you have, you don't have a little asterisk next to it, but on my slides, I put one on there as I did, learned more about the truck. So over the last 5 years, we've spent, just shy of $76,000 on the truck, and an average annual cost is $15,019, which, again, I don't think is a good, accurate number. So we did find some other repairs that had gone on to the truck, and I'll explain at least a couple of them. So as the town manager explained, the swivel joint went in September of 21. That part was no longer available, so they had to rebuild it and put it back in the truck. That cost was almost $31,000. Well, as I learned about the truck, that was the second time that swivel joint went. The first time it went was in about 2015. They did have an option to replace the swivel joint, but the cost was somewhat high, and the option was, well, we'll just rebuild it and put it back in the truck. That cost was $17,000. So, and again, like he described, because the parts are unique, we just can't go and get it from LTI, who actually makes the aerial, but LTI makes aerials for a lot of different companies. Even though American LaFrance owned LTI at the time, they still made unique pieces for American LaFrance. So if someone says, well, LTI still makes equipment, why? Because it was made specifically for American LaFrance, designed for them. It's hard. And then the other thing we learned was that this truck, over its lifetime, the body of that truck had to be repainted at least 3 times. I've never heard of a truck needing to be repainted, a whole truck painted 3 times since production. That obviously indicates the quality of work that this truck was made was not as good as it should or could have been. So, like I said, I've learned a lot. So one of the things that again, I didn't know when I first put this PowerPoint slide together and sent off to you folks, was that the bucket had been replaced. And when I say the bucket, oops, let me go back one. We were actually only talking about the superstructure of the truck. of the bucket itself. So that's this piece right here that the guys actually stand on. Okay, what you see on the bottom is just a cover plate, and then on the top side where they stand, there's another cover plate. Well, in between that is the superstructure for the bucket. Well, when they were having some issues with it, they called the company to come out and take a look at the truck. Sure enough, the whole superstructure of that bucket was rotted away and gone. So what we found for that was that happened in 2015 as well. So that was the swivel joint and the bucket. And that's why in 2015, the department asked for $50,000 to make all of those repairs. So we've spent quite a bit of money trying to keep this truck for something that is no longer made, and you know, it's certainly an integral part of our response and what we can do. Let me get rid of the laser. So, as we said, we had our DPW facility who maintains our apparatus just give us a quick view of the truck. He bullet pointed some things: rust on the fuel tank straps, rust on the undercarriage, body corrosion, corroded rear airbag mounts, which helps with the suspension of the truck. Hydraulic hose and cylinders are getting old. The engine has blow-by, which means it's burning oil when you run it. The brakes, again, normal for the truck in its age and what we do with it, and same thing with the tires. So that was based on an opinion from Brian Friolet. And again, this was not an inclusive list of everything that could be potentially wrong with the truck. It was in a visual inspection only, and there are many things that contribute to things breaking down. So we wanted to give you what, you know, the guys that take care of our apparatus, what did they think of the truck? So you have that opinion. So, yeah, it was mentioned, well, why do we continue to, you know, run our own ladder truck? Well, there are many reasons why. One is it provides for firefighter safety during roof operations. So when our guys are up on a roof trying to vent it or make a vent hole for us, snow and ice conditions, you know, it's not the greatest place to be on a roof trying to vent, you know, with a saw and axes and everything else that we've got to carry. So having this type of truck with a platform allows us to work in a safe manner. If for some reason we need to make a rescue from upper windows and floors, we have a truck that can do that. And you've probably seen some of those on the news. And it's obviously safer for them to get into a basket versus trying to climb down a ladder, whether it be an aerial ladder on a truck or a ground ladder. If we need to, we can supply large volumes of water, not only to help extinguish a fire, but to also prevent fire spread so we can protect an exposure. I usually use the term, we can make it rain on the building next door so that that building doesn't catch fire. The one that's on fire, well, we can't do anything with that, but let's make sure nothing else burns. The other big thing that it does is it carries a full complement of ground ladders to include at least a 35-foot ground ladder. Why is that important? Well, on our engines, we only carry 24-foot ground ladders. Well, how high does 24 feet get you? About a second-story window. And as you've heard, and you've probably seen from planning and development, everybody else, we're putting in some apartment buildings that are 4 stories high. And so, you know, we don't have a ground ladder on an engine to do that. So this truck has at least ground ladders to do that. And as the town manager described, the taller the ground ladder, the more guys it takes to put that thing up. So this is a great truck to have, that if we need to do things and make rescues, we have the equipment to do that. It also allows us for outside access to commercial rooftop units, ability to protect exposures like I already explained, and we can also use the truck for certain rescue type operations. You may have seen firefighters using the aerial basket or the bucket itself to hang and rappel down if they need to, or in low profile positions they can bring the ladder truck down to make rescues as well. So again, like we described, we've got some pretty big buildings that are going in. The picture on the left and in the middle are those apartment buildings that are down on the Nashville line, and then this one on the right is that whole complex that's going up by the mall, the outlets. And what you see is section 1. Section 2 is to be built, along with the restaurant and everything else that's supposed to go there. So we have a lot of potential problems or things that we may need that truck for. The commercial buildings usually have rooftop units, and it's a lot easier for us to access these rooftop units using our equipment and understanding what we're doing climbing on the roof. Can we access them interiorly? Sure, but usually the access points are not designed for firefighters wearing full turnout gear and carrying all their equipment. And then if we do have a fire in one of those types of systems or units, it's probably not readily accessible because we really need to get on the roof to get at it. Because that's where all the maintenance stuff happens anyway, is on the roof. So having our own aerial truck gives us a lot of options to mitigate and solve problems very quickly versus waiting for someone else if we don't, have our own. Yes.
Can I just ask, what's a LEEDs type building?
Those are buildings that are specifically designed for energy efficiency and have certain requirements on how they're built and the systems that you use in order to maintain a green building, I guess is a good term.
Thank you.
Sure. So I just threw some images in on, the different things that aerial trucks and, this type of truck could be used on. Top left and in the middle, obviously using water to extinguish a fire. The bottom left is roof operations. And then on the right is, a low profile, if you had to, extend the ladder into a below ground section, you could do that. The other thing with the ladder truck is, our ISO rating, which is the insurance group that decides how much we pay for insurance on our homes. So by having a ladder truck, that decreases our insurance rates, believe it or not. Because how long is it gonna take for that truck to arrive? They take all those things into consideration. So if we don't have one, the insurance rates will probably increase because the ISO rating will change because we don't have that truck anymore. So just something else to think about. So what is the replacement? So the department, and again, while I'm presenting all of this, I worked with everybody at the station and the groups that have been working on this way before I got here. So they've been working very diligently to put something together. And it's pretty much the same truck we run today, just new. So I gave you some drawings of a standard truck that we would be looking to purchase to give you an idea of what the truck might, look like as far as drawings go. I found an image of a truck that is similar to what we'd like to purchase. This isn't anything that we're buying or anything that, it's an image for you to get an understanding and concept. Sometimes pictures are worth 1,000 words. So I gave you some information as far as that goes on what we'd be looking to purchase. So the other thing, when we're talking about the kind of dollars that we're gonna be asking you for, people go, oh my God, it's so much money. Well, in 2002, you purchased the ladder truck at that time for $746,000. Well, I put it into a US inflation calculator, because, well, what do those dollars mean today? Well, it turned out to be over $1.1 million. So when we look at the cost of the new truck that we're proposing, we're at 1.4, almost 1.5. So it is a lot of money for a truck, but in comparison to that other truck, it's only a $300,000 difference. So what would we, while we're asking for 1.5, the truck would be 1.4, and I'm using rounding numbers. The numbers of what you see are, what we've gotten for pricing so far. If we pay for the truck up front, we can save an additional almost $41,000 to make the truck final cost be around 1.433. The remaining dollars of just over $66,000 would be used to replace antiquated equipment and anything else additional that we might need as we go along with the truck. As we look at the truck, the jaws of life, which is the equipment on the left, they're around 20 years old. There is a label on it, but there's a scratch and a gouge right through the label that I can't tell. I know it says 2000 is the very first digit is a 2, but I don't know what the rest of it is. So I'm guesstimating to be around 20 years old, and they're powered by gas engines. The new equipment would be what you just bought for the engines, but this adds to the complement that you have to include rams, which we don't have now, so we'd be able to replace all of that, along with ropes and other ancillary equipment for those types of, high rescue capabilities that we might need to do, battery-powered scene lighting, and some new saws. So the total equipment cost that we could put together for now was just over $61,000. We'd have about $5,000 plus remaining if we were able to successfully, be awarded the 1.5 through you and the town's people as we go forward with this. So then we were asked, okay, financing options. Well, once we knew that, we got to really seriously look at this truck, the dealership gave us some leasing options, and, as we were looking at them, we thought, geez, might be the right opportunity and time. So we presented it to the town manager, and he said, okay, well, let's look into this and figure something out. So we gave everything to him to review, and Tom and him took a look at these, and those are the slides that you have. So this is the lease option from the company. So this was option 1. This was option 2, which was an 8-year lease versus the first one was a 4-year lease. And as the town manager described, this was if the town went on its own and got a bond option for 5 years. I leave the financing up to those professionals. I'm not a finance guy, so I don't want to overspeak, but I certainly will let them speak to the financing of the project after this presentation. So understanding the needs and concerns, we were presented with an opportunity as we spoke to the dealership. They told us that every now and then they have demo unit trucks that are on the line being manufactured. And sometimes, these trucks will become available and the community can purchase it right away. So there's no wait. So when we learned about that, that's when we started to talk to the town manager and say, hey, we might have an opportunity to get a truck quicker. And he said, well, what does that mean? Well, from what I've learned today, if we decided to wait, spec out our own truck and, make it the way that we want it and do everything, as Merrimack would like to do, that's gonna take some time. And then, unfortunately, right now, production, if we were to start the truck to be produced today, it's over 20 months. It's almost 2 years before you'd see the truck. And that's if you got in line today. If we wait, I don't know what the wait's gonna be. They're saying the wait is probably gonna be longer than 20 months. So 2 years to see a truck. I never thought it would ever get to be like this, but and like you've heard from other presenters, it's just everything in general. Supply, demand, people, just everything under the sun is driving a lot of different things. So we'd like to try to do this sooner rather than later. When we first worked with the town manager, we were looking to try to do something very quick, but we weren't able to do that. So the original price that we were trying to get was around 1.38, but because we weren't able to do something quick, because now we're into 2022, that cost of that truck, would you just sell is 1.473. Well, that's an $86,000 difference in 2 months. I'm hearing from the dealership that there may be another increase in another couple months. They're not sure what it's gonna be or if there even is gonna be one, but they're warning their customers, hey, be prepared. Okay, so, like I said, build time for the truck could be at least 20 months. Preparing for the next increase. The other thing I learned today was, because of everything that's going on, a lot of communities and people are putting orders in very quickly. They have over 500 orders for units right now. So that's why the build time is so long. Usually back in the day, years ago, you could get a truck in about 300 days. So that was about a year. Well, now we're almost 2 years out. So it's just crazy what has happened in the industry and what we're looking for. I did get informed today, they sent us a truck that if we were able to make something happen in the April timeframe, because that's what I told him, that, we have a lot of steps to jump through, and the final would be, the town's vote, which wouldn't be until April. They did have a demo truck that was coming off the production line, and they wanted to use it for a couple months before they put somebody's name on it, but we could have that truck in April. So, something to think about. The other thing is, even if we don't take that truck and we want to wait for something different, as I said, there's other demo trucks that come along, or if we want to just, get in line, so we pay for the truck today, we get in line, we would be buying a truck, granted, at today's dollars, and we wouldn't get it for 2 years, but we're paying it at today's dollars. So as you already saw, in 2 months, the truck went up almost $100,000. I don't know what it's gonna cost as we go forward, so.
So Chief, that
Yes.
demo,
Yes,
that they said we could have in April if everything worked out,
yep.
does it meet your needs?
I haven't even looked at it.
Okay,
They sent us some images of it visually. I think it would work. But there were some things that our ladder truck committee wanted to make sure it had and all those other things. So I don't want to step over them.
okay.
I'd want them to look at it, but I just got that this afternoon. So they don't even know about it. If they're watching this presentation, they're learning it the same time that you are, so. But I think in general, it looks very, very close. So if it's something that I think we can work with and fix and do, and we get the approval, I wouldn't see why we would go buy an opportunity to replace the truck in a couple months versus 20 months plus. So.
And this demo wouldn't be like other demos that we bought, because we
No.
bought some other demos
Yeah,
off the
no, no,
line
no.
and
No, this, again.
they've been lemons.
Yeah, no, let's say it comes off at the end of the month, February, March would really, and maybe part of April would be the only time that they're gonna drive this thing around to show it to other communities that are looking at aerial trucks. So it really would have road miles on it, not a lot of use time. The last place I was at, I bought a demo truck that had quite a few road miles on it, but the truck was in brand-new condition, and it worked out very well for them. So, this truck would be different, because it would only have a few miles on it, and not any, quote, work time. It would be show time. So, I think it would be well worth the investment if the town chose to do that. And again, 1.5 is not lost on me or anybody else. That's a big ask. So, but we look at the safety, and not only of the firefighters, but the safety of the community. If we need to make a rescue, God forbid, we may not have the equipment to do it. So we really need to get something done with this ladder truck.
Hey, Barb?
So you've mentioned some equipment that you would be able to buy as well, but knowing what happens with the police cars, when you got the truck, you would still have to load it with equipment like radios, laptops.
The radios and laptops, the
Will you
radios that
be
are
able to
currently,
use those?
yes, the radios that we
Recycle?
currently have can be brought over to the truck now, because they're not that very old.
Mhm.
They're certainly reusable. We don't have any of the mounted MTT units that you've heard speak of as we go forward dispatch.
Mhm.
We don't have those yet, but that certainly could be transferred to this truck as well.
Okay.
Some of the stuff that we're looking at needs to be replaced. We have brand-new hose on the current ladder, we'll move it over to the new truck. We have good nozzles, we'll bring them over. So it's not a full replacement of everything on the truck. It's those specific items that, like I just pointed out, the jaws of life, they're over 20 years of age.
Right.
Most of the ropes and carabiners and everything that are on that truck now currently are not within specification, and they're outdated. So we would like to replace those. So it'd be those life safety pieces of equipment that we'd be looking to replace.
And what about the old truck? Now, if we take it out of service and you can't get parts, are we sitting on a gold mine that you can sell?
I'm not sure. I've looked at, I looked to try to get pricing on what the truck might be worth. The used fire truck websites, selling this truck for around 50 grand. So, and I don't think they're selling that quick. So if it's a gold mine, no one else is buying them. So, I'm not sure people want to invest in a 20-year-old piece of equipment. And then even if they want to part it out, the parts are 20 years old and have use. So it's not like it's off the shelf 20, it's 20 used in whatever conditions it was stored or used in. So,
Any other questions? Comments? Nancy?
I'll just make a quick comment. I remember, I've been in the town since 1972. I just made a point, one of those pictures was in front of Xylas,
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And I
which you
remember-
wouldn't know, but the
No.
old
Yeah.
I
timers
remember
would.
that truck, because
Yeah.
I do remember they used to have musters at the north end of Xylos.
That's
Park
right, they
in
did.
the old days.
And at that time, there was always a debate, why do we need
A ladder truck,
a ladder truck, right?
right?
It was well, now that's not a debate. Not with the apartments we have now, 4 or 5 stories. So the need for a fire truck, you don't have to rationalize to me. I mean, that alone is clear. And we can't rely on mutual aid for that. That's not something that, the time-wise, it's not legitimate. So I have no question about the need, but it is, the cost is heartburn.
Mhm.
It is, it's just. Now, do we have any money in capital reserve at all? I know we just bought 2 new trucks too, so.
We just spent over $1 million for those 2 new trucks, and that basically depleted our capital reserve
Okay.
fund. The council has went ahead and increased what we're depositing in there,
Right.
but that is on a schedule for other vehicles and other replacements. We knew when we came in front of the council way
Yeah.
back when, if you remember, when we came back and presented the capital improvement plan to buy those 2 trucks, that we were gonna have to do some kind of financing for this ladder truck, and we all knew that. And I understand $1.5 million is a lot of money, and when we looked at the financing options, that's why we're looking at a 5-year, we could make that a 10-year and it'd be even a little bit less, but we're looking at 5-year payback on this truck and things of that sort. And this is a vehicle that's gonna be in the community for 20 years.
Yeah, I personally, I'm in favor of it. I mean, I will support it. And the reason I support it is, I think we have to go through a bond, and then the community will make a decision. I think we can recommend it, and you present your rationale for it, which I think you have. But then it's up to the community, so I don't have a problem with it.
Andy?
So, two questions. The first, you know, when a project goes through community development, sometimes there's, I don't know, traffic impact or something. And we ask the developers to take care of that. Is there a mechanism, or do we have the authority that we could put something in place when a developer comes in town and builds a building that is gonna require us to buy an expensive piece of equipment to be able to support the safety of those folks, that they could contribute towards the purchase of that equipment? I don't know,
Yes- yes and
you guys have the planning board expertise, so I'm kinda asking the question to
Good
you
question.
guys.
I'm gonna take a first crack at it,
You
okay?
go
The conditional use permit allows them to look at the financial aspects of what's going on. And it requires the developer to develop a plan of how is this gonna impact the town as far as services, schools, road wear and tear and things like that. And so they look at those things. And most recently, in my memory, they looked at the things and said, well, we have a ladder truck. You know, so we're good. What they didn't look at is the age of that ladder truck and the fact that we have to replace it right away, I don't think. But those financial sheets, analysis, always come out very rosy. It's hard to argue with them, but we get professionals to review that for us and tell us, is this working out? So there is tax impacts that come in that, I mean, our property taxes and whatnot, our property value in town goes up dramatically. And some money has been set aside by the mall to help a future fire station. There's $600,000 in the bank
$650,000.
right now, when the mall was first going in. But that's the only piece I know of that was specifically set aside for this kind of a thing. Sometimes they set aside money for sidewalk improvements and things of that nature. But the financial impact analysis does look at, or tries to look at, the police, the fire, the School Department of Public Works, and all those things, administration, and those impacts, as well as the school impact, which is actually larger. You know, how many kids are gonna come into this thing, and how many teachers do we have to hire, you know, so that does get looked into. It ends up being buried a lot deeper and harder to see. You can't just say, well, there's this pot of money to go out and buy a fire truck. But it comes in as part of the overall property tax income.
And not only that, but as Tom was saying, part of that sign-off process, even before it goes to the board, is that each department reviews it. So fire gets to look at it and actually say, yeah, we can manage this. Water gets to, you know, the MVD gets to look at it and says, yeah, we can supply the water, et cetera. So by the time it hits the board, it doesn't come to us if there are any hang-ups in there, because it would be a non-approvable state. So I would ask you guys that when you're reviewing these, like I said, the ones out of the outlets, they say it's 4 floors, but it's really 5, because you got the cars underneath it, and you gotta go up 5. So, you know, if there's any question in your heart about being able to get up there right now, please say no. Also, my other question was, since you let me in here.
Yes.
We have all of those grants, you know, the funds. So is there anything in the funds that can help us with this? Now, I know the one up for Reed's Ferry might be a little questionable because that's dedicated to Reed's Ferry, but what about the other 2, I think?
They're all basically tied to that section of town.
But
Now-
the fire truck's gotta go up there too.
Yeah,
Now especially we got the Gilbert Crossing.
we could look into that and try to come up with some kind of scenario of the truck is gonna be in Reed's Ferry section. You know, if it goes out 100 times, you know, what might
30% of
that
the
be,
time or
percent of the
something,
time? And I don't know what that would be. We can work on looking at that, and that would come through. They have also looked at the grants, not so much, it's safer grants, but they're not called safer. What are they called?
Yeah, it's the Assistance of Firefighters Grant.
Assistance of Firefighters Grant, and we looked at that years ago, and I said, let's put the ladder truck in, let's put the ladder truck in, let's put the ladder truck in, and the chief at the time said, no, we're gonna put in for the engine. And we didn't get the engine, and then we had to buy the 2 engines. We can also try that avenue, but those grants, we won't know for another year and a half if we get that.
Right, because right now, the AFG is currently going on right now, and to put a project in for an AFG grant is a lot to put together for a truck. So we would not make the deadline for this year, so then you'd have to wait another year to put in, and then you'd have to wait for the decision, which could be another 6 months. So we could be waiting 2 years and get told no, and then now, okay, we're gonna buy the truck, well, now it's another 2 years. So now we're putting this truck off 4 years,
Right.
just round numbers, and it could be more
Right.
or less, but yeah, it's unfortunate, but we can't, there's no grant opportunities for a piece of equipment like this.
At this time, right? And you can't use ARPA money for the truck.
That was my question.
I saw it coming, the ARPA money. You can't use that for this
For a
truck,
fire truck.
for a fire truck.
Did you have another question? Okay. Anybody else have questions? So let's talk financing. I don't understand leasing versus bonding.
All right, so if we can go back. So we'll just do the 4-year. All right, you gotta look at the overall cost. So if we're gonna lease the truck for 4 years,
So, wait, before you go any further, lease the truck and then we own it, or?
yeah, lease and we own,
So a lease to own, or
Lease to own, right.
whatever. So it's
These-
basically buying it over a 4-year period.
4-year period, and financing as a lease agreement with the manufacturer. The benefit isn't after that 4 years, if something's not right with the truck, we say, take it back, but we're back at ground zero and we have to buy another truck.
Well, what's the benefit of that if you've already paid for the truck? I mean,
Exactly. You would
okay.
get, yeah, there really is no
I mean,
benefit.
if you've already put
except-
all the money into owning it, why
Yeah.
would you give it back? I mean,
The only thing is you would get the residual on a trade. It would be like trading in a lease vehicle.
yeah, but you could do that if you bought a
Right,
truck. too.
right, exactly.
And you never
So,
make money
but-
doing that anyhow.
But we wanted to look at the lease option because that was presented to the fire department and by the manufacturer. And the big thing is, you gotta look at it, 4 years, it's gonna cost us $1,586,000, almost $1,587,000. So then I said, okay, let's go to the bond payment. So for that same truck, to spread out the payments for an extra year, it cost the town $1,584,000. So over a 5-year period, it's the same cost as going with a 4-year period, going out with the bond. So
That's a whole nother year's worth of payments.
but it's cheaper because the interest rate's a lot cheaper. Interest rate right now on a 5-year bond is 1.25%,
Oh, but their lease rate is 2 1/4.
to whatever it is. So it's because of the interest. So it would be cheaper, more cost-effective and cheaper for the town to go with a 5-year bond instead of the 4-year lease payment.
And so why aren't we thinking about a 10-year since this is a 20-year vehicle?
We just looked at apples to apple comparison for a 4-year lease versus a 5-year bond. We can go at it. We can have all those numbers for you when we discuss this on next Wednesday
Next
night
Wednesday.
for a 10 and things of that sort, so we can show you what a 10-year would be and see where we're at with that. But we were thinking $300,000 principal payment and then the interest.
Okay.
Any idea how much that would be on the tax rate?
It's right up on the side.
Six.
6 cents.
6 cents
6 cents, okay.
For a 5-year.
for a 5-year. It would be 6 cents.
Okay.
There might be, well, the interest goes up on a 10-year.
The interest goes up on a 10-year?
Yeah, 10-year note, it's more than 1.25. The less number of years you get, the better interest
Better
rate you
interest
get.
rate, because you're not committing the money for
Yeah.
that long a
Right.
time.
And we actually looked at, when we did this, we've inflated it from the last, they just did a bond payment and I just got the numbers. Do you remember what they said today, Tom, or yesterday? I think it was like 0.7 something for a 5-year. So we already increased it based on knowing the Fed's gonna probably increase the interest rates in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's an urgency to get this because the current one is breaking down to the point where you're out of service.
It's out of service more than it's in service. And it's not gonna get any better,
No.
unfortunately.
Not likely to. Not, not by itself at least.
No,
Okay.
and the problem is that the wait times are getting longer and longer to repair these trucks.
And can we even repair it in-house, or is it, we are having to send it out for repair, which is why it's taking
Most of
100
the
days?
current repairs have been unique to the truck, so it has to go out. Yeah, they can still fix the switches and the lighting and the brakes and all those things, but turntables and buckets and, you know, hydraulic lines and all of that might get a little too complicated. And then you were talking about liability earlier. Well, this is an aerial truck that somebody has to stand on and use. So even after we do repairs, it's always best to get the truck re-evaluated and certified that it's good to go, especially when you make a major repair. So, you know, DPW is willing to do a lot, but a lot of them aren't set up to really work on some of the heavy-duty pieces of the truck.
So what kind of warranty would this be coming with? 5 years, or?
Probably, I don't know. I'd have to
Okay.
get that to you, but there's typically at least, the first year is bumper to bumper, anything goes wrong with the truck, they take care of everything. And then there's usually a sliding scale on the paint, and then sliding scales on some of the other stuff. So, you know, the dealerships and manufacturers, they know the limits of most of this stuff, so, but I could certainly get you that information.
The other thing with the company that we're looking to use, it's similar to the same company we bought the 2 pumper trucks with.
Similar to, or the same?
The same, but we really can't, because we have to go and look at bids and things of that
Yeah.
sort. If we use the same company, one of the reasons why we're looking at the same company, number one, is that they are local, and if something is wrong, they come and pick up the truck and drive it to their, if they can't fix it at your site, they pick up the truck and bring it to their garage to fix it.
What's local?
What?
What's local?
New England?
Yes,
Walpole, Massachusetts.
so,
Yeah.
but they take the truck back, and then they deliver it back to us. So I believe with the ladder truck right now, we have to take it down to Connecticut.
Yeah, Hartford, Connecticut would be the dealership that would be willing to take it on. They weren't the American LaFrance dealership back in the day, but they would be willing to, and have been, making repairs to the truck as we need it.
But
cash
that's
flow.
2 guys that I have to send down to Hartford and bring them back, whereas the other one will come and get our truck and bring it to their
It's
station.
gonna be the
so-
same new red that somehow we came up with.
Well, again, if we,
It's a bummer, it's a bummer.
if we purchase the truck that's on the line, like the one that was offered to us today, it's already painted, it's white over red. Again, the image, I don't know what color the red is, but you're right, there's many shades of red. So I don't know.
This isn't firefighter red, the new ones aren't.
I don't know, so, and it was, you know,
All right,
to me, I look at the truck, not so much the color, so.
I get it.
So it's better than the
Yeah.
yellow and green that are coming out too.
God, yeah. All right. So do we need to do anything more at this point?
No,
If we don't have any more
once
questions.
again, like the last presentation, wanted to have you have a chance to be able to ask these questions so that we can bring it back in front of you when we discuss debt service. And you're not saying what's going on, so, you know, we can bring back the information that you asked for.
Barbara?
Is this a separate warrant?
It will have to be
Oh, yeah.
put on
That's what I was thinking.
Either way, whether we lease the vehicle
Mhm.
or
It's a
we
separate
put it on
warrant.
a bond, it has to be on a separate warrant article because it's over a number of years, year term. It's not bought out of cash today.
Nancy?
Yes, you said that the new truck comes with a full set of ladders, just, we have 4-story or 5-story buildings, how high do these ladders go?
Well, the ground ladder complement that we get in the truck, the highest one we would get would be 35 or 40 feet. And I don't know what's on the truck that is, we may have an opportunity. But typically, it's at least 35 feet. So 35 feet gets you to at least a 3rd-story window.
But that's not
Anything,
sufficient
anything
for
higher than that, we can't use a ground ladder. We
You need the
need
ladder
the aerial truck to get higher. But typically, those are for the apartment buildings that we can get at and, you know, use an aerial piece of equipment. With some of the older homes in town, they're almost 3 stories.
Yeah, right.
So we may not be able to get the aerial truck in, but we have a ground ladder that we can get to the building and make the necessary rescues if we need to, or access the roof if we need to, or the chimney, should they have a chimney fire. So, you know, this type of truck is certainly well worth every penny that you pay for it.
Yeah, you just have to get it next to this building without burning it down too.
Yes,
Access
there is
to the
that,
building
there
is
is that
always a
room. That's why a
problem.
lot of people say, well, why do you need 100 feet? The building's only 60 feet. Well, I can't park it next to it, so there's the distance away, and then, so that's why you need the
That
extra
angle,
reach.
yep. Okay, are we good? Any other questions today? I'm sure there'll be more tomorrow. Probably in about 2 hours. Okay, well, thank you very much, chiefs. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sorry to keep you waiting as long as we did, but the way it works.
No worries.
It's not 10 yet.
There's one more item on the agenda. Nancy Murphy asked us to bring forward a role of the town council regarding public health. Town council to discuss and consider potential actions and options to protect public health in light of the ever-changing status of COVID-19 and CDC guidelines. And that was my wording. Nancy, do you want to dig in? We're right at 10 o'clock. If this is going to take long at this point, then we need to decide to go beyond 10 o'clock.
Even,
So we probably ought to make that decision now if we think it's going to be more than just a few minutes.
Well, I think we have to do
minutes.
minutes and everything
We
too,
have
so I
minutes
think
too,
we're gonna
yep.
go beyond 10.
So motion to go beyond 10 PM?
Okay? We have a motion to extend the time beyond 10 o'clock. If there's any questions or comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, we'll go beyond 10, 700.
You're good,
Nancy?
I'll talk fast. Thanks. I'd asked to put COVID on the agenda tonight. And provided the council with some handouts, just some references and resources and links, just in hopes that we could have a discussion about what we all know is a critical public health issue. As a retired nurse, I'm particularly sensitive to those issues that impact human health, and want to be sure that we're doing everything we can as the governing body of this town to decrease COVID transmission in our community. As I mentioned at a prior meeting, despite what we all would have hoped, we've seen the coronavirus mutate and spread across the nation. We've seen the CDC recommendations and guidelines change, which confuses all of us, I think, as the science evolves, and more recently, when vaccination rates are not yet where the CDC would like them to be, COVID fatigue is high, mitigation strategies are being inconsistently utilized, and testing's not always available. Like all of New Hampshire and Hillsborough County, Merrimack is seeing a substantial rate of COVID transmission within the community. Ranking 8th of 239 New Hampshire towns and cities by population. As of yesterday, we were 11th in active cases with 323, 10th in total cases with 4,359, and 13th in new cases. Today, with 73 new cases, we jumped from 13th place to 6th place in the state for new cases. We know that these numbers don't accurately reflect true case numbers or the impact of COVID on the current or long-term health of our citizens. Neither do they include COVID-positive persons who may be asymptomatic and don't test, those who are symptomatic and don't test, whether due to choice or lack of access to testing, as we're certainly having some problems getting those too, or those who may have been symptomatic and had a false negative and thought that they weren't positive, or those who are positive, tested at home and didn't report to the state. So all of those people are not accounted for in the numbers. So we know the numbers are higher, across the board, not just in Merrimack. When there's an increase in number of COVID positive cases, people who live and work in our community, there's negative impact on the community. I think we see that in our schools, see attendance drop as sick kids have to stay home, teachers have to stay home, subs are in short supply, and they're called in to replace our teachers. And though everyone's trying, the end result is that our children are not getting the education that they deserve. Businesses may have to decrease their hours, or when we've seen that on social media, people posting about businesses, or close temporarily or permanently due to a lack of staff. Some residents may choose to shop in other nearby cities where there are more health protective requirements in place. COVID hurts business. Hospitals and our frontline healthcare workers are out straight. They're caring for the needs of our, our local communities, the regular stuff, and now we're overburdened by the additional impact, time, and staff resources necessary to care for an influx of COVID positive patients. Yesterday, DHHS reported to the federal government that 82% of inpatient beds and 86% of ICU beds across the state were occupied. Those numbers are always changing because sometimes there's a couple of people in a bed in a day, so those numbers are always in flux. But contending with staff shortages that have only worsened through the pandemic, the shortages compounded by staff who then become COVID positive themselves and then need to go into isolation. The sheer number of people getting infected at once could overwhelm the hospital system, even if the majority of cases don't require like ICU care or vents. Our town departments and the services our residents expect us to deliver or provide are impacted when COVID numbers increase here. COVID, as we know, doesn't discriminate. It's transmitted within our police, fire, DPW, and all other town departments. We need to do whatever we can to keep our employees healthy, as well as community members who come into contact with our staff. So essentially, I think we all know, because we're seeing it firsthand, that COVID transmission is a problem. I think we have a public health responsibility to the community, and I think it's our place to be part of the solution in whatever way we can. Some things are way beyond our control. There are federal issues, there are confusing guidelines, and I think we're doing our best to sort of figure out how to do what we can. One of the documents I included in the packet, I think you have a copy of it, it says there's no single intervention that will stop the spread of COVID-19, especially because the coronavirus can infect people and be spread both from people with symptoms of COVID-19 and from people without symptoms. Therefore, implementing multiple layers of protection, layered mitigation measures, will be most effective at stopping COVID-19 from spreading. Maybe the best way to review if we're doing everything we can to help reduce transmission here in our community is to consider there was a updated universal best practices section of the State of New Hampshire Governor's Economic Reopening Task Force document that was included in the handouts. One section states the same general steps and actions to control the COVID-19 virus that have been used throughout this pandemic continue to be important and recommended. And then there was a list. There was that list of just, sort of, I thought if we just look at the list and say, if we're trying our best, or is there anything else that we can do? And I'll give an example. Like one of the things that, I mentioned last week, and Paul had it up the next day, was updating the website. The information piece, and I think that's helpful. It looks great. It's on the front page, and it has all the links that I think people may want to access. Barbara made a point last night about masks. Just the most people have a sense, many people don't, and for people that are watching, I think it's important that they know that we're trying to inform people to help keep people healthy here, and I think. I see that as a role. One of the other things that I thought about was, I noticed, we have a health officer in our town, and other communities utilize their health officer in ways that I don't think we do yet. And I think it's a resource that maybe we could talk about down the road, but I think back about PFAS, that was a health issue that the health officer I know was notified about. I know the health officer is informed about, the State of New Hampshire DHHS guidelines and that kind of thing. So I think that maybe down the road, it might be great to have that resource for the town council and have them, weigh in and help, give us some guidance and direction. But in the meantime, I just thought if we looked at this, there's 12 general steps and actions from that governor's reopening task force. And I just thought if we could look at them and say, are we doing everything here that we can? Some of the stuff is, is certainly out of control, but and then I would feel like at least we did our due diligence and we addressed a problem that's, it's a critical health care issue right now. So, any thoughts?
Nancy?
I just need some clarity from you, Nancy.
Yep.
I'm looking at the list,
Yep.
and what do you want us to do with it?
I thought if we looked at the
Mhm.
list
Yeah,
and, number by number, and just said, is there anything that we, what are we doing right now? And is there anything else we should be doing, or are we, meeting these universal best practices for our community?
okay, for example, one of them is vaccination against COVID-19,
That's
Okay.
personal choice. Yep,
which I think is exactly every point here,
yeah,
is personal choice.
right. But like,
Now,
having-
that doesn't mean, I won't, just to
Yeah.
help me clarify this. I think it's important for us, and I think the health officer as a resource is a great point. Personally, I think our obligation is to make sure the information is available to every member of the community. And to encourage and recommend,
agree.
but not to mandate. I'm totally against, well, just to be able
Yeah.
to have any discussion about it. Because I think individuals have the capacity to make the decision about what they want to do, but they need to have accurate information and recommendations. And unfortunately, what's happened is that's changed. It's been so contradictory and so complicated and vacillating that even we who are educated people in the medical field say, now, what is it now?
Right.
So I think our responsibility is to make sure that that information is disseminated as best we can. So if that's your issue, I have no problem with that.
Yep.
Anything beyond that, I have a problem with.
Yep, I'm not suggesting that we mandate vaccines. What I'm suggesting is
But-
that
but
that's.
any of them
Yeah,
is what I'm
well, what's
saying.
that, that's on the list, that we say, okay, in terms of vaccines, the town has we're not mandating vaccines. What we're saying is, like other towns will have, there are vaccination clinics, or we don't have that, but we can, but we don't right now, we don't have anything. So to have that information available and say, we don't have anything to do with vaccination clinics, but on the
We
website
encourage
is.
you. Okay.
Exactly, because some people, I know, different populations may watch us rather than be on a computer, so they may not go on a website
Touche.
and have that information. So I think just hearing what these are,
Gotcha.
it clarifies, and then people know what is the town doing,
Okay.
or what's not our role, who's doing what, and I think just
Okay.
clarification of that we're doing everything that we
I
can.
have
That's
no
really.
problem with that. Okay.
Barbara?
Yeah, some of my friends know, some of them don't, that this was what I did in the Army. I did high hazard infectious diseases, using a lot more protective equipment than what you're saying. But it all boils down to really one thing, that most transmission occurs hand to mouth. Usually that's how the transmission occurs. Once in a while you get inhalation on different things, but viruses don't have feet, they don't have wings, they don't fly into your face. So I think if we could point out some simple solutions, because over the last 2 years, people have been inundated with information. And I think it's important to maybe consolidate some of that, to give them the main points of what can be done to protect themselves. And they're smart enough. I mean, we're dealing with adults. Let the adults make their decisions on what they need to do to protect themselves and their family. Let them know what we're doing, because I think people have forgotten. If you haven't been in town hall recently, we still have all the plexiglass up. We still have all the hand sanitizer around, etc. Should we have vaccination clinics? Well, that's kind of hard some days, depending on when the governor is sending out everybody on his blitzes. So, that may be something that we could do. But when you've got 3 government agencies, the CDC, NIH, which is Fauci, and then you're doing with FDA, and they all can't and the WHO, don't forget the WHO, World Health Organization, they're all disagreeing on any given day about what to do with masks, what to do with distancing. If you look at what's happening in Europe, they're not so sure about booster shots anymore. So it's kind of a crazy world right now, people. So you've got to do what you think you need to do for yourself and your family. Bottom line is good hand washing. Make sure you hand wash, and even social distancing is more important than mask wearing. Because once you get that distance, it doesn't matter where, what direction anything is coming at. Just a thought.
Yep.
And maybe a video.
Yep, I'm not sure that I agree with you about
Well,
social,
see?
but social, I mean, we're three nurses here. Number one, this particular virus, there are all transmissions of virus.
Okay, obviously after that.
Just, no, but I mean, not every virus is, this particular virus happens to be, aerosolized, it's airborne. So washing our hands is certainly important, all of those things are good. But, it's, I think of it, like I explain to my kids, think of it as people smoke in a room. That smoke stays in the room, right? You smoke, even though you're not necessarily smoking anymore, the smoke is still there. So if I don't have a mask on and I'm breathing my COVID, respiratory droplets into the room, they don't just disappear right away. So if, this stuff stays in the air. So that's, in terms of virus transmission, this particular one happens to be one that we need to be worrying about: respiratory droplets, aerosolized things, ventilation in a room. Anyway, I think because people don't have the paper that we have, rather than we started in with vaccinations. And if we could just start at the beginning, because I think we already did this. One of the recommendations was good planning and communication to staff and consumers. And I think the website was is a good place. It's a great access point for anybody in the community that wants information. It's up, those things are updated constantly by the agencies themselves. Vaccination against COVID, I mean, it's certainly, we talk about the CDC and all of the guidance that we have, but our state, we have guidance from the governor, we have guidance from Department of Health and Human Services, and vaccinations, two vaccinations and a booster. That's the guidance that we're receiving as to how to what people do with that information is up to them, but that's the guidance. The third is identifying and excluding people with symptoms of COVID-19 or risk factors for exposure. I think that just sort of goes without saying. We want to avoid unnecessary transmission when we can. And I would imagine that the town has, they don't have guidance around vaccinations, but around coming to work with COVID-19, symptoms, or a positive test. I'm sure there are rules. What rules do we follow for that?
Communication, our Human Resource Department has communicated with all staff. As soon as we get updated guidelines from the CDC and the state of New Hampshire, we are following the state of New Hampshire, but we're also following CDC guidelines. So once we get updated, all planning and communication with the staff goes on. And we are identifying people that have symptoms, and we're asking them to stay at home. And we are asking if you have to social distance. We are doing a lot of these things on the list right now in town hall. Some of us are wearing face masks tonight because we've been exposed, and we're following the CDC guidelines because of that. So the town is doing that. We do look at things. We have signs on the door that ask people who are vaccinated or not vaccinated to please put on a mask. We have seen individuals come to town hall with masks on. We go through and make sure the sanitized, the sanitized stations are functional and working with the hand sanitizer. We did keep all the plexiglass up, and we've actually added more plexiglass in certain areas of town hall to keep the separation and things of that sort. And we are trying our best to keep it. Today I held a meeting with the department heads in this room because we wanted a social distance versus a smaller conference room. And the town has taken this seriously with its town employees, and we are moving forward with the stuff. We are not mandating vaccinations at town, but if somebody is sick, we're just asking to see their vaccination card so that we can determine where in the CDC guidelines what they have to do, whether they quarantine or not. So when we find out somebody has symptoms or been exposed, we handle it right away, and if we have to send that individual home, we send them home.
Next on the list was social and physical distancing, which Paul addressed. I think, we could probably be technically a little further apart, but that certainly is one of the guidance that we have from the governor. All face mask use. I choose to wear a face mask all the time. I have somebody in my family that has a respiratory issue that should he get COVID, we could be in trouble, and I don't want to be the person who's bringing it there. However, in the guidance, from we hear from DHHS and from the CDC, masks work. I have bad asthma myself. I don't really like it. I have a really hard time breathing, and I wind up coughing because I can't breathe in the mask. But we know they work, and it's certainly a tool that cuts down in transmission. And I think we should be doing everything we can to cut down in transmission. We had a mask. Was it a mask mandate for town buildings before, or what was back a while?
It was initial, once it first came out back in, when we reopened, we had a mask mandate, and then we relaxed, had it in his state of emergency, and then we relaxed it when the regulations and the mandates went away. To anybody who's unvaccinated, we strongly recommend them to wear a mask.
And now the guidance around that has changed, that even I'm double vaxxed and boosted, but even the recommendation is now for even me and people that are vaccinated to wear a mask inside in areas where we're coming into contact with people who may not know they're COVID positive, just as a means to cut down. So, that was the state of emergency. That was when that was, okay, I remember us ending it. I just didn't remember what it was. So, that's one of the things that, people, I often hear, and sometimes on social media, it's, well, if you're worried, stay home. We have people that have to come to our town offices may not want to pay extra money to do something online, or may have to go out and get their prescriptions and, register their car or pay their taxes, and they have to come into our town buildings. And, businesses can do what they want, but I sometimes feel as if we need to look as a town, are we doing everything we can to protect people that have to be here from from a risk that they might not have had they not have to come into one of our buildings. So, I think that's a consideration. Should masks be required in our town buildings to protect the staff from?
No.
All right, so that was for discussion, but to protect the staff and to also the community members.
And I think
So
that was my introductory comment related to that.
Oh.
That individuals have the capacity
Speaker.
to make that decision. whether it be-
Mike,
Oh,
sorry. I was
Sorry
trying to say
about that.
speaker. Yeah.
See, I get so busy wanting to talk, I don't pay attention. That was my point initially, is that individuals have the capacity, as you do, and I would fight for your right to be able to make that decision.
Yep.
About whether, and they have, as long as they have the information, they have the capacity to make that decision about what action they want to make. That's all. And I'm not saying what you're saying is incorrect, because I think that's your belief and that's the way it should be.
Well, that's the guidance. That's the guidance that we're having from,
Depends on who you talk to.
Department of Health.
Is it a
needs-
recommendation? Yes. Is it something that I could probably argue about? Yeah, but I'm not going to. But I think that's my point. You have the right to be able to have that opinion, Nancy, and you have a good
And-
basis upon
and
which to have
Town
it.
staff certainly has the right to put a mask on if they want to, and they are all working behind plexiglass to keep them away from the average person that comes in to the building that they don't know anything about. And they have a little bit more understanding of their coworkers. And there are people in town hall that are monitoring folks so that if they do have any issues or symptoms, they're made sure they don't come in. And then we're all adults. If you have symptoms, if you have the flu, if you have measles, if you have COVID, you're sick and you don't go out and spread it around amongst people. I mean, that's just common courtesy and
Absolutely.
responsibility. And I think most people know that by now after 2 years of this quarantining stuff.
I think the difference is that people can be COVID positive and not know that they are. That's the
From
thing.
day one, they
And-
could be.
Right, and that people in the line, that we may, like this, our staff may be behind a window, but when you're waiting in line, then you're exposed to other people.
And
You know, go ahead.
then you social distance, and then you don't go there if you don't need to, or come at another time. I realize you made a comment that sometimes people have to, but I suspect, and I know when we shut down town hall, people were able to manage without coming to town hall. So if they're concerned, if that really bothers them, they should find a different way. Send another person, do it by mail. I mean, there are options, and the town has bent over backwards to try and make sure all those options are available to people. And it might cost them $250 to register on the internet. And if you're spending $200 or $300 to register your car and $250 is going to kill you, and you have to come in here and be afraid of getting COVID, then I think you have a bigger problem. Honestly, I mean, call me up and let me know, and I'll take care of it for them.
You heard it.
And his phone number
Is, yeah.
603-261-8660, and that's the one that's not on the website. Lon?
Yeah, I just want to express that just the last 5 minutes, a sincere presentation, and we've begun to accept the sincerity, but diminish the results, because I haven't heard any real suggestions for actions that at least I think I can go forward any more than I have the last 27 months or so, or longer. You people seen me come to this meeting with my mask. I've been at various times very, very cautious about, I'll call it self-quarantining, not because I've had symptoms or whatever, but because some very important people like grandchildren go to school. I'm told after I've seen them, oh, maybe, okay? But I agree with Nancy Harrington, counselor.
Thank you.
The attempts to narrow the focus or cajole or whatever someone by, if I dare use the word mandate, into action isn't what this is all about as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for letting me rant.
Okay. So let me just
Sure.
try and summarize my opinion. We've been going through this for 24, 27, whatever months, and all of this information has been all over the media, and it's been all over everything, and people have been hearing COVID forever. They're getting COVID sick of hearing about COVID. And that's the biggest problem, I think, now, is people are relaxing to the point where maybe they are allowing themselves to be exposed. And so I think the best we can do is continue to urge and encourage people to be aware that there's a real problem out there. And you know, you look at all these lists, we can't do vaccinations in the town of Merrimack. That's state and federal levels. We can encourage people to social distance, but you know, when we had tape out here and we only allowed 9 people in the building and stuff like that, it was restrictive to the point where I don't think it was required. And people, if they're concerned for their own health and safety, shouldn't come and sit next to people, and they should make those decisions.
I understand that, but I think that we're saying to the people that may want to be here but can't for health reasons, that you're not important enough to, if you can't come, oh well. And I just think, in terms of what Lon was saying and Nancy, in terms of actions, that was what I was asking, was do we need to take or do we not need to take other actions? What are we doing? And on these particular items, is there anything else we should be doing? So, I mean, up to now, I'm hearing a no, that people are comfortable with what we're doing as a town. Correct? Am I reading the room right?
I am.
It's all,
I guess what I'm wondering, what are you thinking should be done that isn't already being done?
Exactly.
Justin didn't talk to me. You know, I'm like, what is it you're looking for?
That's it. That was my original.
Yeah, because it's not telling us where you want to go.
I'm one of 7 people. No matter where I want to go, it really, I have an opinion. Right, I mean, I have an opinion, and I have thoughts. For me, where I want to go is what action can I contribute as part of it, of our governing body here? What can we take to help the mess that we're in? All the things we said. People they're COVID out, they're fatigued, they're sick of it. I think that's a lot of the reason for the changes in the CDC guidelines. It's like, I mean, the nurses have just, they said it was, so.
And really, and also the other kinds of realities that are going on. When you talked about the quarantine being for 10 days, went to 5, yeah, it was based upon pressure, but it was also based upon the reality of the economics of the country. You cannot have nurses being out for 10 days. There aren't enough of them. And could they, in fact, lower it to 5? So there are decisions like that being made, not just, not even based on science. Some of it's just economics.
Right. And
But I think everyone's listening to that, too.
Yeah, and I think, what you just said, we can't, economically, we can't afford
Right.
to not keep things going. Our kids need to be in school, our businesses need to go. My thought with this was, what can we do, if anything? What can we change to drop the numbers so that we're not in this substantial rate of everybody knows somebody right now who's home with COVID? And we weren't there a while ago. I mean, COVID was a thing, but, so that was my point, and just to see what people's thoughts were around this. I mean, it's a public health issue, and I think even though we don't talk about it and we don't have a specific public health group, I think our health officer would be a helpful person to have in that. Maybe, I would have hoped that could have come from the public health department and say, hey, this is what we're doing, a presentation for the town. And so that was, as that didn't happen, that's why I wanted to raise it. And, and I feel like everybody in this town should be able to feel as if they can come into a town office and not be put further at risk of something we can take actions to do by simply social distancing, washing our hands, putting a mask on. Those are the things that, we're not asking anybody to get a vaccination. We're not asking them, I don't think the things that the guidance we're getting from our state and from the governor is unreasonable. And as we're part of this state, I'd rather be part of the solution than part of the problem. And I just wanted to know what people thought around, anything that we could do. So that's my rationale.
Barbara?
Yeah, I'd like to think that most of all, people in our town are empowered to do what they feel they need to do to stay safe. So if you're coming into town hall, if you're going anywhere in town and you feel like you want to wear a mask, wear the mask. If you feel that, people are in a line and you're feeling uncomfortable in the line, back up. Even ask the person if they're getting too close to you behind you, please could you back up just a little bit? Because there are going to be places where people are not so cognizant of the spacing. So don't, just put a smile on your face. Don't be nasty about it. Put a smile on your face and just say, yeah, please could you just move back a little bit. I think it's more important to empower people than to mandate people. And Lord knows they've been inundated with news all over the radio, all over the TV, all over social media.
I think I sat one day and timed how many times CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS was popping out stuff on COVID, and I think I counted 5 to 6 times an hour per network. So I think we need to encourage people to still feel empowered. If you feel like you need to go get your vaccinations, please go get your vaccinations. If you want to wear your mask, please wear your mask. Lord knows I carry my hand sanitizer around all the time, but be empowered to do what you feel is necessary to do for you and your family. And don't be afraid. We're all in it together. Don't be afraid to ask other people to help you do that if you get into a crowded situation. That's my thought.
I agree.
Number 7 was cohorting, grouping individuals together. That really doesn't pertain so much other than certain departments. Modifying layouts and limiting group sizes. Paul spoke about that. Spacing here within moving meetings to rooms that accommodate good and frequent hand hygiene. Barbara certainly addressed. Same thing. Number 10 was cleaning and disinfection of frequently touched surfaces and avoiding shared objects. I think that's also addressed, and I see hand sanitizers and all kinds of extra cleaning happening in all our town offices. Increasing and improving room and building ventilation. I don't know what we have here. It's a little harder in the winter. I mean, we can't open the windows, not when it's 4 degrees out. The joys of working and living in New Hampshire.
No, but we talked
Yeah,
even
we've talked about that
yesterday
last
about
night.
electricity because we had the ventilation going
Yep,
24/7
right,
instead of, allowing it
Yep.
to shut off in order to continue to maintain outside air
Yeah, which is a great.
circulation.
I just want to say that we, as a town, even the town hall and police department, fire department, we have taken the safety precautions and to the 10th degree. People, we did, like I said, we put up plexiglass. I never took the 6 feet signs out of areas. They're still on the floor. They're still on the walkway coming up. If we have those long lines outside the building, they're still there. We try to keep people apart. We have people in divisions and that if with plexiglass in between them, we bought additional stuff. We want to make town hall as safe as possible for the residents to come to town hall and make them feel comfortable coming to town hall. We have done a lot of different things. It's winter time. I am keeping one of the doors as you walk into town hall open still, so people don't have to touch that surface as they walk through. I have seen people, when I have walked around town hall, people actually stop as people are coming in and out of the building to let other people pass, or they will hold the door like myself, but we'll turn our back to the door so the person can leave, so we're not breathing on one another. People have done that. We have done a lot of the recommendations. We were ahead of the game way back when, and I don't want to toot any horns or anything else, but I was borrowing, stealing to get masks, to get PPE, to get plexiglass, to get, my buddy Sal. We were working with him to get this stuff. We were on the forefront. The police department came to me 2 days ago or a week ago and said, we want a certain mask. We didn't have any more in stock. We went out and we bought it. We are making it safe, and we want our employees to feel safe to come to work, because we understand that if they don't come to work, then we're not providing our service. We are cleaning still. We are using the electricity, like we said, with running the fans constantly in the other building to circulate the air, and we're changing out the filters more frequently than we should. So I just want the people out there and the residents out there to know that we are doing everything to make people feel safe to come into town hall to conduct the businesses if they want to conduct the business. If they don't feel safe coming into town hall to conduct business, they can pull in the parking lot and call a number. We still have that. They can call, and we send people out to people's cars if that's the case. So we are doing everything. A lot of this stuff on here, modifying layouts, we already did that. We did that way back before we opened back up in June of 2020. And we've kept those layouts here. The one thing we did is we put the cushions back on the benches because somebody asked, because it's very hard out there when they sit on those benches. You know, that was one thing that we put there.
tough.
But we are doing things. We do look at it. I've had employees, do you feel comfortable? Do you want me to put on a mask? And they say, nope, I'm good, or yeah, could you put on your mask? And employees are putting on masks. So we are doing a bunch of this stuff. And if somebody feels uncomfortable and they want somebody to put on a mask, all they have to do is ask.
And Aaron doing contact tracing?
We are not doing contact tracing. We are doing individual contact tracing. Every time an employee comes down or is exposed to COVID, we are asking for them to give us the names of employees that they consider close contacts. Then we are asking if they would like, if we could use their name. If they say yes, we go out and say, this person has COVID. Please self-monitor. If you think that you are a close contact, please self-monitor. If you come up with symptoms, let us know right away. So we are not doing, keeping a list of, Paul, Tom, Xenia, Sharon, who we were with, but we are letting people know that if this person has come down with COVID, and we send out a message every time there's a positive COVID case in a department, we send a message with the guidelines to all employees of that department saying, hey, somebody tested positive. These are the symptoms you need to look for. If this happens, we want you to do X, Y, Z. So we are trying to make the community and the community of the town and municipal buildings to go ahead and be safe so that people can come and conduct business here. Sorry for my,
Okay, no, I think you're making a good point that the town hall is just about as safe as we can make it at this stage.
Yeah, it's on there.
It's a lot safer than any
like
store
that
you
one.
go
That was
into.
So, yeah. Let's-
And that was, Paul actually get us to number 12. And so I think a lot of good suggestions were made for people that, like I wouldn't have known, maybe, that you could pull up, you could call and say, can somebody come out? So that was the point of this exercise, even though we're talking about it and we all know it exists and we're all COVIDed out. I just think it was really important for us to talk about it, have people know what's happening here and to know that thought has gone into, these numbers 1 through 12.
and I hate to prolong this, one more thing, but
Too
this
late.
just came up to me, and I'm sorry for saying this. We have all deliveries still coming to the finance department because I do not want the delivery people who are seeing numerous businesses throughout town to be walking in and maybe being contaminating several people in line or other things. We have all deliveries still coming into the finance department. They are taking hold of all deliveries for UPS, FedEx, you name it, it's coming in through the finance department so that we don't have people that don't need to be in town hall that could have potential sharing or spreading of the virus. So we have taken these steps. So once again, we are doing everything we can to make the people who come and do business in town hall as safe as possible. Sorry.
Much better
Okay.
than Shaw's.
Yeah, yes.
All right, so we good for that? We'll move on to minutes. We have minutes from Thursday, December 16th to be approved. Anybody want to make a motion or?
I'll make the motion
Was it
to
December
approve
16th?
the minutes. Yep, you weren't here
You weren't here.
You were in
That
there.
wasn't December 16th?
December 16th, yeah.
for December 16th.
They say that you were excused.
You were away.
You were in New York, I think, or something.
All right,
Short-term memory deficit.
all right.
Wow, Finley.
So approve the minutes of December 16th.
Okay, motion by Nancy to approve the minutes,
Second.
seconded by Lon. Does anybody have any corrections, changes, or additions? Nancy?
I do, actually, on page 8, comments from the council, on line 35, the years of 2009 to 2018, it should be.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't have- you know what?
2009 to
Let me just go- wait a minute,
2018?
Let me just make sure. Yes, 2009 to 2018, actually, check the document. And then, on line 33, it's just reversed. It should be HB 737 Commission rather than BH 737 Commission. Yep. And that's all I had.
Barbara?
Yeah, same page, line 45, Merrimack visiting nurses, and it should be and capital H hospice. Yep,
And then hospice should be capitalized.
technically.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? You can make suggestions.
No, no.
Seeing none, I didn't have any problem with the minutes. I didn't notice any. So if there's no other inputs, we'll approve the minutes as corrected. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining?
Abstain.
Finley Rothaus abstains, so that's 601. Right? Right. Thanks. Comments from the press, comments from the public, comments from council. Nancy Harrington.
One quick one, real quick, about Betty Spence. I just wanted to make a comment about Betty. Betty is the one who got me involved in the selectmen. And you were back there then.
I was.
And, yeah, she was pivotal in talking me into even applying and all that stuff, so. So she has a special place in my heart, and I hope she rests in peace.
Amen.
Okay. Any other comments from councilors? Nancy Murphy.
Thank you. I think there's just, everybody probably, we've talked about this for a while, but the wreaths across America, we had sponsored wreaths that were placed on veterans' graves here on December 18th. But we're going to do the same thing next year. And until tomorrow, I'm just checking the date. Yes, until tomorrow, every wreath that is sponsored, Wreaths Across America will match. So if we donate 15, that will give us 2 wreaths. And I think we're looking for, we currently have 237 purchased, and we're looking for at least 350 wreaths sponsored. So anybody that is willing and can do it ahead of time, we get more bang for our buck, and we can put more wreaths at other cemeteries. So
I know, she's
Jennifer
amazing.
Smith, the police, is phenomenal coordinating it. Yep. So thank you.
Okay, great. Any other councilors? Seeing
Motion to
none,
adjourn?
we have a motion to adjourn, seconded, made by Lon Wood, seconded by Barbara Healy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 700. Good night, Merrimack.